welcome to Inside the Birds Pregame Live, presented by Mojo, the sports stock market app. We are here at Rivers Casino and Sportsbook on Delaware Ave. It's where Philly loves a winner, including the NFC East champion, Philadelphia Eagles, who will play today against the New York Giants in an NFC Divisional Round game. I'm Geoff Mosher from Inside the Birds, alongside my co-host, Adam Caplan. Joining us today, as always, we got the Tape Father, NFL Film Senior Producer, Greg Cosell. That's my new nickname for you, the Tape Father.
The Tape Father?
The Tape Father.
It's a little long.
Wow, okay.
We got the Godfather, and Todd Herman's is the Todd Father, and you are the Tape Father.
All right. Well,
You like it?
I don't know. I have to think.
Have to get used to that one.
Yeah.
Let it marinate for a little bit.
Yeah.
All right. Well, normally we also have former Eagles wide receiver Jason Avant running a little bit behind. He will be with us shortly. You guys ready for some breakdown?
Yeah,
of some
man, let's
playoff?
go.
Playoff weekend, Jeff.
After it.
Fired up?
Big.
You
Yeah.
fired up?
Yeah.
I'm fired up. Now, the production team told us to dance a little bit, like get fired up. We're fired up.
I won't be doing that.
No,
We're fired
he's
up.
got a mock turtleneck on. He doesn't dance.
No. You look like a college basketball coach with the mock.
Do I?
turtleneck. Yeah.
Mike Bray.
Exactly, who's retiring.
I know. I saw that. Yeah.
Delaware guy. Well,
Yeah.
he used to coach at
Love
Delaware.
the mock
Yeah.
turtlenecks. Yes.
Absolutely. All right, well, we know the Eagles and Giants are meeting for the second time in 3 weeks. We know the Eagles had a first-round bye. They had 14 wins. The Giants just came off a 6-3 upset in the first round of the playoffs, beating the Minnesota Vikings in Minneapolis to get to this stage. Tonight, someone will lose and hit the golf course. The other team wins and goes to the NFC Championship game, which of course will be next Sunday, 3 o'clock. And if it's the Eagles, it's here at the link. And man, that's pretty impressive, Adam. It's been a while, right? A couple of years.
Yeah. Look, the Eagles are on quite a run here. They're coming off the bye, which is important. We'll get to the injuries in a couple of minutes. We have some updated information, which just got like the last 24 hours. But yeah, the town's kind of lathered up. There's no question about it, because they didn't seem to be into the Week 18 game knowing the Giants starters were being rested. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of smack talk with Giant fans and Eagle fans on our YouTube comments.
There's a surprise.
Shocking, right?
Yeah, it's back.
Probably going to be quiet at the link.
They're going to be lathered up. Jaws likes to say they'll be lathered up tonight.
Well, we may have some gamesmanship already going on, as our friend Jordan Ranan, who works for ESPN, a Giants beat writer, reported today that the Giants hotel in Center City does not have running water. Apparently a pipe burst in this hotel, and the Giants are unable to have running water and take showers. And I'm sure a lot of people here are very, 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 very sympathetic to that.
It's kind of like, for those who are old enough to remember, just kind of the craziness of, like, if you play in the Boston Garden, how crazy the heat would be.
Yeah.
Or they would never have. If you were the visiting team, you would always have the worst showers.
Sure.
Or, of course, if you played the Patriots, something crazy would happen. Maybe your water wouldn't work in the hotel. But yeah, this sucks.
Yeah. Well, sucks for them.
Yeah, it does.
Or if you played in the vet and you just had to play in the vet. You just had to play in the vet.
Mike Schmidt said, cat stink.
Right.
You remember that?
Yeah. So obviously a big matchup. I think what makes this matchup special, guys, is that it's an NFC East showdown. It's one of the better rivalries. Every NFC East rivalry in general is one of the better rivalries in the NFL, and here you have it playing out in the playoffs, winner go home. Greg, there's not a long history of Eagles-Giants, yet these are both two organizations that have had some magical runs throughout the years. Do you kind of enjoy that whole, as someone who just watches tape though, that whole like rivalry element to a playoff game?
Oh, without question. I mean, sometimes it's hard to get a true feel for the familiarity. People say, well, what do you see? That's hard. You'd really have to study, that for 10 hours, and I can't spend that kind of time. But, I think there's always familiarity. About players, because you study, position guys study their opponent. Like, for instance, if you're a corner, you become really familiar with wide receivers. And the ones you play twice a year, you're more familiar with than guys you see once a year, maybe once every 2 or 3 or 4 years.
Right.
So there's that kind of familiarity. I think there also becomes familiarity with coaches, because coaches don't dramatically change. Are there tweaks here and there? Of course. But for the most part, and I learned this very early on, and Adam knows this because he sat with us in the matchup room for years, coaches coach against coaches a lot. because they know what the other coach is going to do in given situations,
Right.
and you get
Tendencies.
tendencies, and you get more of that in these games.
Sure. And, Adam, I don't know if all the listeners or sports fans out there realize this, and as we are joined by former Eagles wide receiver Jason Avant, he can speak on it a little bit too.
You were
But
salsaing last night, though. I saw
I
that.
was- I was
we
salsa.
see you on socials getting your salsa on.
Always.
Nice.
You are the man.
That was
But most
last
people don't
Friday.
realize that in training camp, teams start to practice against their divisional
that is correct.
foes toward the end. Not anybody else,
Right.
but divisional foes, because they know that represents 6 of 17 games. That's a large
Teams
portion
do
of
four
their
things, two things essentially in training camp. When the schedule comes out, they start practicing against the first 4 teams, and then the divisional opponents, like you said. That's the way a lot of teams go about doing it.
Right.
Jason, how much time in training camp would Andy, I would say, spend on the first opponent? Would it be a week, 10 days, 2 days? Like, how does that work?
It doesn't happen in training camp. It happens in OTAs.
Oh, you start in OT.
So yeah, so when you start your OTA practices, usually you have your inner squad like scrimmages and stuff like that you're doing 7-on-7 and stuff like that. But the last week of OTAs is all opponent specific work. And that's usually how that works. So you get your first taste of all the division opponents in that last week of OTAs.
Here's a question off that. And Greg, you could probably get in this as well. But what if they change coordinators? Do you go by what the guy did previously with another team?
So every coach has a Rolodex of all the coordinators that they face. So they keep a history, scores, what they've done.
Oh, okay.
It's a Rolodex. They keep it there and they pull it out based on the guy that they're playing.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's how that goes. That's kind of inside information.
I like
but
that
everyone,
stuff. This is good
Everyone
stuff, yeah.
keeps.
That's why I asked.
Everyone keeps that record.
That's what I said about coaches against coaches. Well, I'll give you a perfect example. Jim Schwartz now in Cleveland.
Yep. Oh, you know.
They know the teams in the AFC North know what Jim Schwartz does as a coordinator.
Yeah. Right.
You know what his tendencies are.
Right.
Now maybe he'll tweak a few things here and there, but basically he's not going to be a totally different guy.
Four-man pressure front. That's
right.
it.
So teams are going to know that when whoever has Cleveland, when the schedule comes out, early in the season, when they're still in OTAs at that point, early I guess in April or May when the schedule comes out,
yeah.
they will start preparing based on what Jim Schwartz has done throughout his career. He has a pretty lengthy career and a long resume.
Yeah, guys don't deviate much from
No.
it, and they got it down based on every down and distance, the stats for all of his
Yep.
career, and how much his blitzing percentage is, and guys usually stay true to that range. It's going to be.
It's funny you say that
10,
because a couple of
10%.
summers ago I had a great conversation with Carson Palmer. It was right after he retired. We spoke on the phone for almost 2 hours, and I asked him about that. I said, because I was curious as a veteran quarterback, because you know how fans think. They think there's going to be really cool stuff done in all these games. And I said to him, were you ever really surprised as you started getting longer in your career by what you saw from a defense? And he said, almost never. He said, coordinators rarely, defense coordinators rarely did anything that wasn't on film that we saw.
Right.
He said, you have to execute against it, but he said, was almost never surprised.
Definitely. All right, interesting stuff. Well, it seemingly has not mattered who's been coaching the Giants over the last 5, 6, 7 years, because the Eagles, who were 2-0 against the Giants this year, have won 24 of their past 30 matchups against their Turnpike rivals. And the Giants, talk about the historical burden they're facing, they have not won at the Link here in Philadelphia since October 27th, 2013.
Wow.
Think of how much younger we all were.
10 years ago.
Almost 10 years, yeah.
10 years.
Almost 10 years ago. That's a long time, almost a decade. This is the fifth
I
time.
remember that game, actually.
You remember that 2013 game?
That was a Steve Smith. No, that wasn't Chip first year, right? Was it second
Chip
year?
first year.
Chip's
13.
first year.
Yep.
Was that a Steve Smith tipped interception? Was that game? Was Steve Smith on our team?
Oh, yeah, I was going to say because he used to play for the Giants, too.
Yeah, maybe it was. Maybe
I don't
it was the
remember
year.
that.
Maybe it's the year.
I think that's Steve
That may have been a
Smith
year
with the Eagles
before.
that. Yeah, it was.
No, hey,
It
listen.
was.
Power to you for remembering anything about that game, because I certainly don't. And I usually have pretty good recall from games in the past. Yeah, but they have met 4 times previously in the playoffs, and both teams are 2-2. So we got a lot to break down. There's a lot to discuss here at Rivers Sportsbook and Casino. And if you can't tell already, but there's just so many people filing in here, getting ready for the early games, ready to place their wagers, ready to take advantage of all the great food and drink specials here at Jack's Bar Casino.
I saw someone had a number 11 jersey the Wentz was taped over and they put Brown over it.
That's one way to do it.
Yeah, it says
Jason knows all about that.
Give Brown his money, man.
Well, it's funny you talk about remembering games. I don't remember that game at all, but I remember a long time ago, and it might have been, maybe it was when Vermeil was coach, maybe, I don't know, or maybe it was after, when Rob Carpenter had a huge game,
Yes.
a playoff game against the
Detroit Lions in 1995.
No,
the running back 26.
Yeah, Rob Carpenter. He was
Yeah.
with the Giants, and he had a huge game. You know what? I think that was his game. Wally Henry had 2 fumbles.
Number 89, Wally Henry.
You're looking at me. I have no
You have
idea.
okay.
Diapers.
So Wally
Jason's wearing diapers,
I'm
man.
just a few years older than you. just a few. Yeah, just a few.
Oh, Rob Carpenter was the running back.
Right.
His son played for Ohio State, right? The linebacker?
I don't know. Is that his son?
Yes.
Bobby Carpenter?
Yes, Bobby Carpenter.
Okay.
And
Because I know Bobby Carpenter. He was in our boot camp, and he does radio in Columbus.
Yes, in Columbus,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
So Wally Henry was a former punt returner who
But he had
played
2
at
fumbles in
UCLA.
that game, I
Number
believe.
89.
Yeah,
Wally
yeah,
Henry.
yep.
Wally Henry. Yes.
2 fumbles. Well,
You got a memory, man. How the heck do you remember 2 fumbles? Not 1, 2. Wow.
All right, well, obviously special teams is going to factor in today's game. It usually does, and hopefully it is clean for both sides. Remember, if you have any questions or a score prediction, you got a chance to leave it in the YouTube chat box. Please give the show a like. Please share it on whatever platform that you're watching it on. Let's get into this game, fellas. So, we always start with kind of a big picture X's and O's look. Jason, I kind of wanted to ask you just about, like, what changes in a playoff week, preparation-wise, the attitude, the demeanor, what it's like out on the practice field. As soon as that calendar turns to postseason, what is the demeanor like within the confines?
You know what kind of sets the tempo for the week is how much media is in the locker room in comparison
Especially here.
to the regular season. And it kind of like ups the stakes and you begin to realize, oh, this is really serious, and it kind of takes a life of its own, and you understand that there's no tomorrow. So it's different from the regular season. There's always, next week we can fix this problem, or you're trying to survive the season half the time because you're injured and you're hurt. So when it's time for the playoffs, you're just thinking about no tomorrow. You begin to see everyone's eyes glued in on it. So it's a very special time. If you're a person that likes lights, this is the time. This is the time.
How important, as the clock turns, is veteran leadership? I mean, we can talk about coaching all day long, X's and O's and all that.
Yeah.
How important is veteran leadership as the clock turns and you get to the playoffs for that first week?
I would say that teams that have been there before, they have a resiliency, so when something goes wrong, they don't panic, right? Because they've been there before, and then you can rely on a guy like Kelsey and Fletcher. So that's always good, but there is something about youth too, right? So if a young player has, I always say that rookies will burn you, but if they have gone through their ups and downs in the early season, and they've learned from their mistakes, it can help you because they don't know what they don't know.
Right.
They begin to do crazy stuff,
Right.
but sometimes it ends up working.
Right.
So that's the thing about, youth. Like, they may think they're going to get here every year.
What was
so they're playing.
Well, no question, because I remember, and he even spoke about this, someone like Dan Marino, he gets to the Super Bowl in his second season, and he thinks he's going to be in the Super Bowl 5, 6, 7 times.
Right.
And he never gets back.
Right. Yeah.
That's the way you start to think.
How much, Jason, I know they lost, they didn't play well at Tampa, but how much could that help them, at least the younger guys playing it against the Bucs last year?
I think it helps Jalen Hurts to understand that the game is different, the importance of it is different, the growth. I think that being a playoff team and having been there before definitely helps them, especially in comparison to the Giants. When was the last time the Giants has been in the playoffs?
Well, a while, because the last 5 seasons they've had the worst record in the NFL. So
right, so it's been a long time. So in comparison, when they get hit with an uppercut, it's more likely that the Eagles are going to be able to respond because they've been there before. And that's what this is about, is when adversity strikes, will the team be prepared for it because they've gone through similar situations before? Will the Giants be able to handle an uppercut from the Eagles and be able to get off the mat? The chances are that they won't because they don't know that.
Which is, we'll get into this because I don't want to jump ahead, but I think that speaks to how I think the Eagles will come out and play today, but we'll get to that.
Okay.
One more thing, Jason. A bye week, how much do you think they could help this team, the Eagles?
Our team, a lot. Significant because there's so many injuries, and even with the guys that are playing, they're still nursing injuries, and you want to get a chance to get a full roster back. You get Garner Johnson a little bit healthier. You get Jalen Hurts a little bit healthier. Josh Sweat's going to play this week. All these things bode and help our defense. And then it's an extra week to get Avonte Maddox. Once we get Avonte Maddox back, if we can continue to win or play and get him back at some point, that's a team that's pretty full strength. And talk about Lane Johnson, we don't usually win without him, so getting him in that lineup is good.
Well, a lot is made about the idea of facing a team 3 times in 1 year, beating them twice in the regular season, then having to see them again in the playoffs. People say it's a very difficult thing. The stats say it's not. In fact, and there are some various different stats out there. What I was able to get is that the Seattle lost to San Francisco last week. San Francisco had beat them twice, then beat them again in the playoffs. That upped the record to 16-9 lifetime when a team who has swept their division rival then faces them
and then beats them for the third time.
Right. So 16-9 is pretty favorable. I think more recently it's closer to 500, but I'm wondering just from a player standpoint, when you see that team for the third time, if you've already beaten them twice, because I think you guys had that during your day. No, actually, you guys did.
We were on the opposite
Yeah,
end. We were on the opposite end, I think, with the Cowboys one time. And they beat us 3 times, I think. It was the only time they ever beat us 3 times.
Right, but do you feel like there's any kind of different mentality there from the team that's lost twice, from the Giants today?
No, they just press harder. They press harder. They want to win. They may be a little bit hungrier at times, but I think the Eagles know what's at stake. But usually it begins to even out if the teams are as talented as one another. But there's a big talent disparity between the Eagles and the Giants, and that's the thing. It's hard to overcome.
Right.
As well as Hodgins have played, as well as James have played, as well as these guys have played, they're not on the same par as Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, and also the corners that they're going to face. It's only so long that they can keep this up.
Yep.
Usually guys that are undrafted, guys that are drafted late, they're drafted there for a reason.
Yeah.
They can play well for a game or 2 or 3, but trying to be consistent and be a Pro Bowl or be a consistent veteran is very, very hard to do.
To Jason's point, guys, the Seahawks were actually winning that game last week against the 49ers at halftime.
They were.
It was close going into the third quarter,
over.
but if you never watched the game and looked at the final score, it was a blowout. I mean, it was a 20-something point win for the 49ers because, as you were mentioning, eventually the cream rose to the top there.
Yeah,
They did what they had to do.
Here's a question, because I remember, I didn't play professional sports, but I played college ball. Is pressure a real tangible thing? Like, for instance, if the Eagles were to lose tonight, this season, which has been considered phenomenal, would be considered a disappointment now. I mean, a major disappointment.
In this town?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
in this town,
be a tragedy.
in this town, they're going to treat if they. I don't want to even speak of this.
Right, but you know what I'm saying. Yeah, right.
But yes, if something
live here long.
like catastrophic, like a loss tonight happens, this whole season will be in the drain.
Correct.
Yeah.
And they'll be talking about getting Jonathan Gannon out of here and Nick Sirianni with his failures and
Stuffed crust pizza.
They're going to talk about this team like they did.
Like they ended up 6-11. Yeah, exactly. Right.
That's Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Greg, you
No
know
doubt
that.
about it.
No, I know, but that's why
Organizationally, I'll tell you what, I could tell you, I'm sure Jeffrey Lurie would not be happy. Because
Right.
They spent a lot of money. They made a lot of moves. They spent a lot of money in free agency, extended a bunch of contracts.
Right.
For them to lose today to an inferior team, and we're going to get into that, kind of how the league sees the Giants roster, it would be bad. It's a fair question, but it would be bad.
Well, that's why I mentioned the pressure thing because, I imagine some players feel it more than others. Obviously, it's a very personal thing.
Is it tangible pressure?
The chances, and this is a hot take.
Yeah.
The chances of the Eagles having a better roster than they have now over the next 5 years is very low.
That's not a hot take at all.
Right.
I think it's going to be really
you know
difficult
what I mean?
for them.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is this is the optimal time this year to win.
Right.
Because they have so many one-year
And because we
contracts.
know, and we've discussed this, and whether you want to get into it today or not is maybe not relevant, but we know that this defense is going to look totally different next year.
Absolutely.
Because there's too many free agents. You can't sign them all.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So pressure is a real thing.
Right.
Now, it's the coach's job to alleviate that from the players.
Right.
Because Mr. Lurie will come down into a meeting. That he has a meeting with the coach every week.
Right.
Right? They have a meeting. And his expectations are going to be relayed onto the coach. It's the coach's job to keep the players relaxed.
Right.
To take that brunt on. You can feel when the sphincter, Coach Reed used to always talk about, get tight.
Right. Oh, for sure.
I can't imagine Andy talking about the sphincter.
Yeah,
No,
he always
yeah.
talk about that, like the sphincter getting tight.
Yeah.
And the coaches begin to,
I had a
put that
basketball-
onto
I had
the
a
players,
basketball
and it's not-
coach.
You shouldn't do that.
I had a basketball coach use that same phrase too back when I played. Oh yeah.
Wow.
Jay, you can speak to this because I have been told that Andy is almost a master at not showing the pressure.
Yeah.
Like even after the big losses, and he's had a lot of big losses in the playoffs.
Big losses.
The next day, I've been told he is the same. He does not present that this was the biggest letdown ever. He's just already ready to move on.
Well, you want your players to understand the significance of the game.
Right.
And how important it is, but you want their personalities to show, and you want them to play loose because you play better when you have that freedom and that autonomy. If you're sitting there worrying about making a mistake, that's why he coined the term "fear nothing, attack everything."
Right.
You can't play balled up.
And you don't want the whole week guys in the locker room just walking around with grim faces.
No,
You know.
You want to have energy.
Right.
They put pressure on you now.
Right.
You drop a couple balls in practice. The backup is warming up. But they do it in a fun way. I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, before we move on, last question, because you had brought up what does the league think of this New York Giants roster, and a lot of Eagles fans, not a lot, many, who would reach out to us and be vocal, had a tough time coming to grips with the fact that when you return 3 key players at least, guys that we'll talk about like Leonard Williams and Xavier McKinney and Adoree Jackson, that it actually makes the Giants an improved team. We joked about the people, look at their record over the last 7 or 8 years. But we weren't saying that the Giants were a great team. We're just saying they're a different team and improved. What is the league's view of this roster?
I asked someone, I have a pretty good friend of mine whose team happens to be in the playoffs. He said, if you watch these teams, he goes, oh yeah. He goes, absolutely, we all have. He said, Philly and the Niners are the 2 best rosters in the NFC. He goes, man, if they have to play each other, wow. So I said, what do you think of the Giants? He goes, not very good. So he went over.
Which is not really a hot take.
No, it's true.
Yeah.
No, it's the truth.
Right.
He went over, so he said, you want to read my notes on the Giants? I said, yeah, absolutely. I'd like to hear what you think. He goes, here are the issues. Like 10 issues on that team.
Yeah.
Maybe on Philly, you might have 1 or 2.
What do you say? Some of the,
secondary, not very good at corner.
Right.
Interior offensive line.
Yep.
Wide receiver. Linebacker, he says it's great to hear that Jalen Smith could still play, but Jalen Smith's a shell of what he once was.
And they just picked up Jared Davis, 2 weeks ago, and he's playing a lot of snaps.
Look, not a very good roster. These pro guys know everything about everything.
Oh, yeah.
This is their job.
Yeah.
They have to get the coaches prepped.
But getting McKinney back is big. And again, we're not saying that makes him a great roster, but he's a really good football player.
We're having Adoree Jackson back.
Yeah.
But no, look, if you just looked on paper, you go, this should be a slaughter like week 14, but it doesn't work that way.
Right. It could work that way,
sure,
but it doesn't necessarily work that way. Right.
But now, as you said, those 3 players are back, so theoretically their defense will be better, and we'll get into what they've changed since then, which is interesting.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, I didn't think what they've done. Like,
oh, no, I can.
Greg knows this. They play more zone.
I can tell you the whole deal. Yeah, we'll get into
surprising.
that.
But it's funny, Jason said, like, the coaches will have a Rolodex when they're preparing for the season. Greg, maybe in your mind, do you remember Wink playing this much zone?
No, we'll get into that because there's a lot going on.
But that's the one difference. But if you just look at rosters, which is the way you're setting this up, this game should not be close. But things have changed because the Eagles have not played this team with all these guys back with something on the line. So you have to see what happens.
There you go.
Remember the disparity between the upper echelons and the guys that are second tier is not a 30-point gap.
Right.
And that's what people don't think. Oh, we're supposed to blow the Giants out. Like, dude, the backups are good. That backup guy has a statue at his high school. And that's the truth.
I mean, we know Isaiah Hodgins is not A.J. Brown, but Isaiah Hodgins has become their number 1. And you know what? Isaiah Hodgins in college was a big time. It's not like Isaiah Hodgins got picked up off the street and he never played football before.
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
like Jordan Mailata, right?
Yeah.
Like he's a backup at Louisiana Community College.
Right. I mean,
at some point he was a player.
Yeah.
He's a good player.
Yeah. All right, we will talk about this. First, we got to get into injuries because injuries really can be the great neutralizer, and obviously, both teams getting some guys back, but also nursing some wounds. So let's start with the Eagles. As we know, the only person who's just out because he was not activated onto the 50th or into the practice window is the punter, Aaron Sipos. So Brett Kern will punt for the Eagles today. He has not been great, but he is their healthiest punter as of now. And then we just see what happens after this year, after this week.
Wow, that's interesting. Think about it, right? So if Sipos could start punting next week in practice, they may have a decision to make, which is not a decision we thought they would have to make. We kind of laughed when we said this, Kern will definitely be the punter the rest of the playoffs. I don't know about that. We'll have to see. And obviously, Avante Maddox is not even running yet, from what we understand. So we'll have to see what happens.
He might not play. I mean, toes. From what I've read, I never had the injury, and I don't think you did you? Ever have a toe?
Well, I have had toe injury.
Okay, I mean, those.
But not that significant.
I mean, he may not be able to play at all.
You had a note 3 weeks ago that he had procedure done.
Yeah, procedure done, right.
So we'll have to see what he can do. Is he able to start working back? We don't know.
Yeah.
But we know this.
Yeah.
We know this, that Blankenship comes in. When they go nickel, Blankenship's in, and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's in the slot. That's what they're going to do.
Yes, we'll talk about that in the show. As far as Maddox, I mean, we've pointed this out. They didn't put him on injured reserve with 2 games left in the season, which means they felt that there was an inkling that
he could come back.
He couldn't. If he would have been on IR, he'd miss 4 games. The last 2, this game today, and then the conference championship. So they must think that there's a chance he can play in the conference, or must have thought it at the time.
But he didn't work at all.
He's got to get back on the field to at least have a
Yeah.
shot. He didn't do any work at all. So it's not looking good. Maybe if the Eagles make the Super Bowl, and that's what we've said from the start
got to buy,
about Avante Maddox. Right. Let's talk about the good news as far as Jalen Hurts and Miles Sanders both practiced this week, both practiced in full. They were not on the injury report, and they carry no designation into the game. So Miles was wearing the left knee brace. You could tell that they were trying to alleviate his workload the last 2 weeks of the season. Should be all right today.
Question for Greg or Jason, if you saw the tape. Could you notice with Sanders that he was impaired with that left knee injury at all? Hard to tell?
I find that hard to tell, but
Gotcha.
maybe Jason sees it differently.
Not. Here's the only thing that tells me is that his number of reps have gone down.
Right.
So, yes, can I look at him and tell? No, but
Right.
I can tell that something's wrong because Boston Scott's in the game a lot more than he has been most of the
But when he
year.
carries the ball, I don't think you say, "Oh, look, he's hurt." He's
Sure.
just playing.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, as far as Hurts goes, he did take all the reps. He practiced as normal. He was off the injury report. As we understand it, does that mean he's 100% ready to be Jalen Hurts MVP? I think there's still some concern there. Obviously, the shoulder was a severe shoulder sprain that he had. There was some collarbone issue there as well. We'll know, as Adam has said all week, if he's close enough to 100% by how they're running this offense. Are there any quarterback design runs? But one thing that, as I understand it, is this team doesn't want him taking another hit like he took against Chicago that led to the injury. So if you see Jalen Hurts drifting and not knowing what and throwing the ball away, then you'll know he's trying to preserve his body and make sure that instead of running, right,
Gotcha.
that he doesn't take a hit. Or he might run because there's open space and slide, but he and the team would like him not to be able to get driven into the ground like that happened against Chicago.
Right.
Because he's got a it's somewhere between a grade 1 and grade 2 right shoulder sprain. And you worry about that because if you get driven to the ground, and by the way, there's this myth like it can't get worse. That's not, I was told by someone in the medical profession that's not right.
Really?
You can make it worse, yeah, because it's separated.
Right.
It's got to heal, and he's by the way, and I know Sirianni. People say he did it for effect. He put it out there to tell the truth. In week 18, Hurts was in pain, a lot of pain.
Sure.
So in 2 weeks, it's not like it's going to be gone.
Right.
So, but you can't coach scared. He's got to run.
There you go.
This is what this offense based around.
Here's the thing. Give the ball when you need to. Or take it out of his decision making. The times that Jalen Hurts have gotten hurt, even the play that he got hurt, those are times where you can give the ball. So take it out of his hands that time as a coach and just let the run ride.
Well, that's a good point because a couple of people I spoke to sort of expressed a little concern that if you're running your standard amount of RPOs and you're putting the decision making into his hands, that his natural aggression is going to be, I want the ball in my hands, which of course can lead him to taking hits that otherwise. You're almost suggesting every once in a while go under center, go downhill, right? Hand the ball up.
Just give the ball up. Like he didn't have the best game against the Giants.
Right. We'll get into that.
Didn't have the best game. And a lot of that was just decision making. It wasn't throws, it was bad decision making from him. And there's multiple times where he can give the ball.
Do you think that decision? Well, we'll get into that in a second because I want to talk about Lane Johnson. So Lane Johnson, we know, is playing through a torn tendon in his groin area. We've discussed this.
It's basically a core muscle.
Core muscle, yeah. As for the adductor, which everybody knows he has, is it connects, for those who want a visual, your groin to the inside of your leg, like your thigh, inside of your thigh area. It's not an easy area to play through, especially that position. As far as we understand, this week at practice, he was extremely limited when he was limited on the report. Yeah. That meant he was doing some individual stuff, not team. They do save him for that one practice where they had, which is this week it would have been the Thursday practice.
Right.
He did practice in full that week. We're not all there, so we don't know exactly what that means, but we have to assume that he took a decent amount of first team reps. What we've been told, we understand they really are trying to save him for this moment because they think he can get through it, but they're not 100% sure because of the injury, so why not save it all for the playoff game?
Yeah, just to add to that, so basically what I learned over the last 24 hours is that there's a way you can play with this torn adductor tendon, but you have to compensate because there's certain things you can't do because it's not attached. So that's kind of what Thursday's practice was, which is the only one where they really practiced. He was able to test it out. And I've heard people know him say he's pretty confident he can get through this. I don't know how. Because the thing is, there's certain movements that, as a football player, as an lineman, you have to make. You won't be able to do that right now until it gets fixed.
Is it his left side or his right side?
I don't know.
It's a great question. I thought it was right side, but
right side. I thought
it was right side.
Because now you get into pass setting versus an edge rusher.
Right.
Where, so that's a question.
So I've had this injury.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
I've had
the adductor?
Well, yes. I almost had to rip off the bone. So I've had it, and I played 10 games with it. I couldn't practice any time throughout the week though.
What year was that, Jack?
2007.
So those 10 weeks you did not practice?
No. Yeah. So I practiced on Friday for a little bit on third downs.
Okay.
On third downs, I practiced on Friday, but it's something that doesn't get better. There's nothing that he can do that's going to make this better.
Except for surgery.
But surgery.
Right.
So what happens is, and this is where you need a guy, there's an alignment specialist that comes to the facility. His name is Dr. Hatrack. Dr. Hatrack does all alignments. It's not just alignments like a chiropractor. He can put your face back into place.
Right.
And he puts your hip, and that's the most comfortable you're going to be is when your body's in alignment. And they'll probably have a guy like that on the sideline after each series where he's putting his body back in alignment, which is taking the pressure off of him, because it's going to be very, very hard for him to get through this game. Lifting your leg up hurts.
Well, that's why I'm saying that. You think about an edge rush where if it's his right side where he has to, let's say, vertical set, okay?
Yeah.
Or even a 45-degree set. I'm not talking about a short set where you don't necessarily have to stretch out your leg, but a 45-degree set or a vertical set where he's got to stretch out, his right leg. That's going to be a problem, isn't it?
It's going to be a problem, but this is what I learned from the injury. The most I've ever learned about football was in that year. I learned how to get open by clawing, scratching, cutting off the wrong foot that I was able to use in my repertoire later on in life. I figured it out because I was competitive.
Right.
And I believe that Lane Johnson is so competitive that he's going to have bad technique but get the job done.
And that could work because he's super competitive.
Because he's ultra competitive. And I think he's going to figure out a way to make it work.
It's funny you said, the person I spoke with this morning said that he's going to have to find a different way, which he did this week in practice. He'll have to compensate for things that he can't do.
Yeah.
Now, it's easy to say that, but when you're going full speed in a game.
Well, it'll be interesting. He's going to go up a lot today against Kayvon Thibodeau, who's not really a bendy player. Right. He's more of a speed to power guy than he is a true bender that's going to. He's not a motorcycle leaner at the top of the arc. He's not that guy.
Right.
But he's still a pretty good player. So it'll be interesting. That's something to watch today.
Well, I think
he's getting a lot of pressure lately.
Yeah.
A lot of it.
Yeah.
The fascinating conversation will really be when we're doing this next week and the conversation turns to compensation techniques against Kayvon Thibodeau, who's good, but coming into his own versus...
You're thinking about Nick Bosa?
Nick Bosa or Micah Parsons, who's on another level of...
They both are.
That's what I'm saying.
Bosa's really good.
Yeah, really, really good.
You talk about bend and getting low.
Oh, yeah.
He's
Pretty
just
much do
small.
everything.
Yeah.
All right, good news also for the Eagles. A couple guys who were on the injury report earlier in the week. Brandon Graham with an illness, and nose tackle Linval Joseph with a calf. They're good to go, expected to play. I think the only guy we might have a little uncertainty about is Robert Quinn, who again popped up on the injury report, even after all that rest, but not for the knee that he missed 5 weeks for, but for the back. That was the original problem before the knee. It's just been a rough go ever since they acquired him.
Yeah, he just got the OLDs. He's just old.
He's old.
I know the feeling. I know the feeling. Yeah.
It is crazy how he had 18 and a half sacks and probably
Last year.
4 dozen pressures or more. And now he's a guy that just his body's breaking down, as Jason said. He's in his mid-30s now. Terrific football player. It's a shame.
Yeah.
Because I think you both had that note. You noticed he was actually standing up, rushing, right?
Yeah.
Which is not the way you're supposed to rush.
No.
He couldn't bend his back.
Not a guy who's been as good as he's been throughout his career.
He's been really good.
So now he's available according to the injury report. That means he's available with no game status designation. That doesn't mean he'll play though. They can hold him out if they want.
That's correct. All right, we will see when the inactives come out later today. As for the Giants, one of the reasons why they've been able to play better lately, well, they've got better health. Now, Isaiah Hodgins, we mentioned, was on the injury report, but he does not carry a designation. He's going to play. He was dealing with an ankle. Leonard Williams, who has not played against the Eagles this year.
That's correct.
I think. He will play. He was having a neck injury from earlier in the year.
He played really well last week.
Yep. Landon Collins will play. The big question is Azeez Ojulari, who has been limited throughout the week with a quadriceps.
And he only played 8 snaps last week.
Right.
Before
he
got
played
hurt.
really well against us the first
He
game.
always, whenever he plays, he plays well. He's just always
He's
hurt.
got something like, I think he's played 7 games and has had 5.5 or 6 sacks. So he's actually played well.
Right. Fabian Moreau is going to play corner for them, we expect. He was dealing with the hip. And, of course, who did I forget?
Torrey Jackson.
Torrey Jackson. Right.
He's off the injury report with the MCL sprain. He has it back, but he'll play. Julian Love will play with his hamstring. Jason Pinnock, who scared them because he got carted off, he's fine. He took all his reps, and he's part of that, what do they call, dollar defense?
7 DBs. They play a ton of that.
I'll tell you what. They've done a good job of scouting. If you look at the guys they've added because of they didn't have any, they just needed depth.
Right.
Pinnock off waivers plays a ton from the Jets. And Hodgins off waivers from the Bills.
Bills, yeah.
Pretty good.
Another former Bill, John Feliciano, their center. He's off the injury report. He's going to play. He was dealing with a back. And Xavier McKinney was dealing with, as we like to say, fingers, because that's how it was on the injury report. We know he had the ATV accident midway through the season. He has been back. Has he been playing all right for them?
Oh, yeah, he's a really good
he's a good player.
Yeah.
So obviously you can see why
he's
the
a big
Giants
addition.
are,
I mean, like I said, I'm not going to sit here and say, wow, they're a great defense.
No.
But he's a really good player.
Sure. And then when you add Leonard Williams, Xavier McKinney, Adoree Jackson back, that's 3 starters on your 11. That's a big difference.
And we're probably going to get into this later. It's not just that they're back. They're better teams since they're back, but they're a good team.
Yeah.
Like they do like the little prerequisite things in order to win. Like their receivers block on it and every like little things like that. They go down the field and they're used in the run game and they help out. Right, so those are like little things.
If you look at their staff, right, very comparable to the Eagles in terms of their ability to develop players. They're also big into player development. We've seen here in Philly, wasn't always the case, but the Giants have done a great job because if you consider all the players they've lost, okay, we found another one that has an ACL injury. This is crazy. So Josh Azudu's out for the season. He will be ready for OTAs, but he's done. They love him. He would have started. He was starting.
He'll be there at left guard.
Yes, with a neck injury. Marcus McKeithen, who they would have been their top backup guard, he tore his ACL very early.
Both
he's
from
done.
North Carolina.
Yep.
Yeah.
Shane Lemieux went back on the IR with a toe injury. He's done. Wandale Robinson was their starting slot. He's done with the ACL. Sterling Shepard tore his ACL. You see him as a cheerleader. They show him before going up to the players, hit him on the back. Hey, let's go, let's go, let's go. Nick Williams, we'll go to defensive now. Nick Williams, torn biceps, he's done. This is the new one, which you didn't know about. It's new, we just didn't know about it. 6th-round pick, DJ Davidson, a D tackle, 6th-rounder, out, ACL.
It's all ACL team.
Aaron
right there,
Robinson, starting corner, ACL. Yet they're still a playoff team losing 7 players for the season. That's a lot.
That's tremendous. They've overcome a lot to get where they are. All right, let's get into this matchup. We just talked about Jalen Hurts coming back from the shoulder injury. You guys said it. He was not at his best against the Giants in the season finale. In the game he got hurt against the Bears, he was having an okay game. He really had a nice fourth quarter, but it wasn't a great game all around. His last 2 starts, he has had passer ratings under 70, and this is a guy who had a 101.5 passer rating for the year. But let's just focus, though, on the last game. He's coming back from the injury. We know he's not 100%. You said decision-making, you could tell, was not great on his part.
Yeah.
How much of that decision-making is fueled by his own sort of, you think, indecision on what he can and can't do because of the injury?
No, this had nothing to do with injury.
Nothing to do with it. Okay.
No, this had nothing to do with the injury. Like, there was a play on the left sideline where Miles Sanders almost got decapitated.
Mm-hmm.
He threw a ball on like a wheel route.
Right, I remember
And
that.
it was a pick route, and it was a great defensive call by Wink Martindale. Basically, they hadn't shown corners over zone. The corner went in motion, so he automatically thought it was man-to-man. And it was an easy read. The guy that was down, that went down, I believe it was Devontae Smith, went down to pick the flat defender, but the corner never went anywhere. If that guy, that was a bad decision. If that guy goes for the knees, Miles Sanders is out for the year. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And
Not
some
good.
guys will do that, right? In the playoff times, guys will do that, right? So that's one decision. There was a decision on a 0 blitz where he held the ball and he got into the right play call. Devontae Smith was open on the slant, which he could have thrown the ball, but he held it, he second-guessed it, ended up with a sack. Mm-hmm. Can't do like little things like that. There was multiple times where he had a chance to give the ball, but he ended up keeping it when he shouldn't have, right? Or going with the RPO. Give the ball. Like, those are like little things. I'm talking about, this is 5 or 6 plays that I'm just thinking off the top of my head. I'm not talking about going through the entire film.
Right.
But there's multiple.
What did you think, Greg?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's funny because I'm looking at my notes because I take notes on all these games and there's and maybe some of these plays, the ones you're talking about, but I have Hurts did not throw a wide open dig to Smith to start the first play of the third possession.
Mm-hmm.
Clean pocket, dagger concept. Hurts off the pocket and ran for 1 yard. Hurts missed a TD to Smith from the plus 10-yard line in the second quarter. 2-man route concept to the field with Slot Brown running the corner route and Smith from the outside running the slant underneath Brown. Hurts had Smith wide open but didn't turn it loose.
That's the play.
That's the play?
Yeah.
Breaking down in the pocket with no pressure and running into a sack. Belton interception on 3rd and goal to end the Eagles' first third quarter possession was one of Hurts' poorest decisions of the season. I mean, it could go on.
This
is decision making. This is not, guys make physical mistakes. It's the NFL.
Yeah.
Right.
As we've said, the other team is good too.
Yeah.
Physical mistakes, they happen in every game.
Right.
But these are mental mistakes that, see, here's what you don't know. And you could speak to this because I'm sure you played in games where you were hurt and maybe you were even fighting pain.
Yeah.
I'm sure that you have to do that in the NFL.
You have to.
We don't know if the pain impacts the ability to function physically.
That's why I asked
See,
about
I don't know the answer to that.
Decision making related to that.
Yeah, because if you're really in pain at a certain movement, you could get a stab of pain and that changes just, I would imagine it could. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
I haven't been in a situation where my pain has stopped my brain.
Right.
Right. Yeah. And am I saying that is it possible? I'm pretty sure it is, but I think from his level, at this level, and how well he's played, that's just rustiness.
Yeah.
I was going to say,
that's
a lot of
That's
practice
what it
time.
looks like to me.
And that's what it could have been. He missed a lot of practice time, and who knows? But I mean, mentally, he did not play a very good game.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think Adam, there's no question. Again, we're still early in Jalen Hurts' career, but we've talked about the idea of this offense is at its best when you can incorporate the zone reads, when the quarterback can run himself. That opens it up for Miles. The last couple games, we've had to see more of a conventional throw the ball offense, and you haven't seen the quarterback runs, and obviously the offense has looked a little different.
I'd be curious, because I know you, I feel like I know what I'm looking at. I think you would agree with that.
I think
You've been
we
doing
would
this a
agree.
long time.
What do you see right now, Greg?
Well, no, I was going to ask.
Not bad for you.
I was going to ask you. Do you ask people, about Hurts?
Always.
Okay. What do they say?
Generally, they're very surprised he's been this good.
Right.
No, they will point out that he's got a lot more talent. They did not see him process like this, Greg. Let's save the Saints game. He didn't play well.
Right.
But they didn't see him process like this in college.
Right.
And it's a tribute to him, obviously, but the coaching also. You have to give the coaches credit.
See, It's funny because the one thing, and you know, you do a lot of radio, obviously I do as well, when you talk about an offense being really well schemed and well designed and presenting pretty defined reads and throws, people take that to mean you're ripping the quarterback. And that's what the coach is supposed to do.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that this takes nothing away from Hurts, but I think for the most part, the Eagles offense, with his running element, which is a critical piece, by the way.
It's the number one thing.
Right.
Quite frankly.
Has presented, I mean, when you turn on the tape all season long, you see a lot of pretty clean throws. Now, you still have to make the throws, but I think that the Eagles have done a really good job in defining the reads and throws for him, so it's clean.
Right.
And, you know,
Honestly,
that's a
though,
good thing.
The downfield element to his game this year is
Has
where,
been
when I speak to
correct.
people, is where they see the most improvement that maybe not be relatable to just coaching.
thing
where,
that would bother people-
where you trust your receiver and you can throw it outside the numbers, and you can, and the ball placement on the
really
downfield
accurate.
has
He's
been
really
good.
Yeah.
But the thing that would bother people last year was how many throws he did make. He wasn't seeing it well.
No, he missed last year.
Too many.
He does that on occasion this year.
Not a lot.
But nowhere near what he was.
And that's the big jump in terms of processing. Look, they could define it all they want. Once you ask Josh McDaniels why Derek Carr won't be his quarterback anymore, doesn't throw the football.
Right.
Throw the damn football. If it's there, throw the football. And he's doing it this year.
Yeah.
The thing with Jalen is because a lot of these things are just being developed, you missing time will severely affect that ability.
Great point. Yep.
Right? So it's not something that, this guy was a great processor his whole, his entire career. And it's just something that if he misses time, it doesn't really matter.
Throws him off.
This is a guy that this could possibly affect. So therefore there is grace and there is, time for him to correct these things.
Question, because you said you had the adductor injury many years ago, and you basically didn't practice at all until Friday, and it was late anyway.
Yeah.
How in the world did you play as well as you did with missing so much time?
The question is, did you feel like you played well that year?
Okay, yeah.
I didn't play the best, but I was sufficient. Like
How were you functional? It's a coaching term. How were you functional and not getting benched? Andy could have benched you if you weren't playing well
enough.
enough.
There was a lot of guys that could have came in there and took my spot.
How did you
I just think
do it?
it was just like, it's the competitiveness. Like once you get out there, like the thing that you have to remember in your mind, there's no sympathy for you once you step on that NFL football field. They don't give, you can't see when it's raining on television. It's hard. It's very hard to see the rain.
It's true.
They don't see the wind. Nobody gives a damn.
No.
Right? So you catch the ball. I don't care if it's 50-mile-per-hour wind. And if you take that mentality in there, is that nobody cares if you're hurt. If freaking Kayvon Thibodeau comes out and have 4 sacks on Lane Johnson, nobody's gonna give a damn that Lane Johnson's hurt.
No.
And if you have that mentality, you're gonna say, to hell with it. I'm gonna go out there and put my best foot forward, and I'm gonna make it happen. And that's the mentality that you have.
Found a way. You found a way.
You make it happen. Everybody's hurt. And if you keep that mentality, you'll be fine.
All right, let's talk about what Jalen and the Eagles offense is up against today. Not necessarily from a personnel standpoint, but what they're going to be seeing from Giants defensive coordinator Wink Martindale. We know that in the 2 games that the Eagles have faced the Giants, Wink has come after the quarterback a lot, blitzed a lot. We also know, as we'll get into, that lately Wink is starting to shift more to a lot more zone.
Pretty
like
dramatic.
Against the Vikings.
I've run this by people because it was surprising. Wink's coaching to the personnel that he has in the back end. Yeah, he might have 12 guys available, but if you graded each player, it's not great. They just don't have a lot of talent in the back end, and that's why he's probably going to zone. That's one person's opinion I spoke.
Right.
Threw that at me.
Do you think today he is more of I'm going to keep this zone thing up, or is he going back to attack?
I think he gets killed if they play man. See, you could do certain. If a team is just one guy you're worried about, you can do that. But if you've got 3 guys, how could you possibly play man against them? Did they play heavy man in the first matchup in week 14?
They played some man in the first matchup.
Yeah, and they got killed.
Yeah, and they got killed.
The first half
they were down 21-0 on
and
3.
And the Eagles didn't have to
Right.
throw in the second half.
Right.
Yeah.
So what's the answer here?
The man is tough again with the Eagles because the running element and who we have outside. But when you get a Dory Jackson, there's nobody on our team that can just naturally run past Dory Jackson.
He's fast. Yeah.
Right? He's
faster corners in the NFL.
He's a really fast player. So you're not just gonna run. You can out athlete him at the catch point, right? But you're just not gonna run by him naturally. Fabian Moreau is solid. I wouldn't say that he's a world beater or anything like that, but he's not a terrible player. So I think that if they get into a situation in critical moments, Wink loves the zero blitz in certain situations. And I don't think that he'll have a problem with leaving those guys on the island. I really don't.
So let me ask you this.
Yeah.
When you decide between whether he's playing man or zone, a guy who does as much disguise as Wink does, for example, in that game against the Eagles,
The Week
season
14
finale,
game, you mean?
Yeah, the Week 18 game.
Right.
There was a play early on, I think it was the first drive, we brought it up on the podcast, where it looked like cover zero. There's 5 guys in coverage, there's 6 guys at the line of scrimmage all blitzing, and at the last second 2 guys drop back, and Jalen throws a little pass to Quez Watkins on the left side. He winds up picking up first down. But it was all man coverage, 6 guys rushing. At the last second, the 2 guys dropped into the same zone. In fact, I'm not sure they were supposed to drop into the same spot, but they did.
Well,
either way,
no.
is that a zone or is that man?
Well, it's a combo.
Is that a blitz or is it not a blitz?
Right. Well, you're trying to waste offensive linemen.
Right.
When you start
Sure.
rushing
They
guys,
got a free rusher on the play.
you're wasting offensive linemen if a guy or 2 drops out, because
Right.
that offensive lineman at that point is not really
They're blocking
available
nobody.
to do
Yeah.
anything else.
If it's zero, a show zero, the most likely if they pop out of it is usually cover 4. And there's something by the defensive coordinator for the Redskins did it all the time. What was Williams? What was
Greg Williams.
Greg Williams.
Mr. Blitz.
Greg
He just
Williams
blitzed.
would always show zero, put guys in the A gaps,
Yep.
and pop out to cover 4 in that situation. And you have to have that if you zero blitz.
Right.
It's something that you have to have.
Right.
As an offset in order to confuse people. So, yeah.
So,
I mean, you see a lot of teams now, Jeff, just to give you an example, teams that'll actually play man coverage, let's say cover 1,
Right.
man coverage with a single post safety, and some teams will start with a 5-man rush. It looks like a 5-man rush, and they'll drop 2 out underneath who end up being zone defenders underneath.
Sure.
Now, you'll see that a lot with teams that work the middle of the field in their passing game.
Right.
You know, it's
The Eagles do that. They play man on the outside, zone on the
It's all
inside.
tendency based.
Right.
You know, you'll see that a lot.
Right.
But, you know, look, in these 2 games, Martindale has blitzed probably 50% of Hurts's dropbacks.
right.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Now, that's
high.
a high number.
Right.
Exactly.
But the other thing that's been really intriguing, though, is over the last maybe 4 weeks, I think it is, their percentage of cover 1 has dropped dramatically, and they played a ton more zone, including split safety, which is not something that you normally see a lot of from Wink Martindale, but they played a lot of split safety.
Okay.
Well, part of that is personnel. Like,
Yeah.
so let's take the Vikings game. You got a guy that kill you in Justin Jefferson the first time you played. So let's switch it up and be able to, mitigate him at some point.
And they
right?
bracketed him a number of times.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. To negate him at some point, right? So I think that's part of it. Playing backups against starters, do you think that comes into play? Like, so the 2
Right.
games that we're
Yeah.
holding the highest weight on is, okay, it's this guy that's responsible for 90% of the Vikings offense here.
Right.
And then I'm playing with backup players against the starting NFL offense.
Yeah.
Do I take that in consideration?
Wow.
Well, and the other factor, though, does come in, and we don't know about this till we play, is will Hurts be a factor as a runner, or will that not be a factor?
Right.
And obviously, you have to prepare. Look, coaches prepare for every eventuality. Wink Martindale's not saying, oh, he's not going to run at all. We don't have to worry about that. He's not saying that this week because it's very possible Hurts could run a lot. We don't
preparing
know.
for everything.
So he's
preparing that
preparing
they're
for
gonna
everything.
run their whole thing.
Right.
Given that, you'd probably believe that he would play a little more zone than man. But, you don't know.
Sure. Now, Carl Stevenson, our Patreon subscriber, asked a great question. He observed, like we all did, that Wink is very good at getting free rushers to the quarterback. How do the Eagles combat? They've seen this now twice. I always say, like, offensive lineman, Trey has told me that you have to, and Jamal Jackson, you have to make your call before the snap, and if you're guessed wrong, you all have to be wrong on the same page so that at least you're all blocking somebody. And Wink seems to be a master designer of having your protection seam set one way and then the blitz comes from the other way.
That's what he does.
So how do you combat that if you're the Eagles?
Well,
Tell your quarterback to watch out?
it's hard because we used to do pieces in the matchup show all the time when he was in Baltimore where he did just what you said, where he'd, let's say, show 5 potential rushers to one side, and you could see the center call out the protection, because you have to account for those 5.
Sure.
Okay? You have to. You can't say, oh no, they're not going to come, they're going to come from the other side. You don't know that.
He wouldn't know that.
You don't know that.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, what would happen is 3 of those 5 would drop out, and all of a sudden you'd get someone from the other side where the protection is weak.
Right.
Yeah.
And he'd be free because the protection
He's
can't
amazing.
pick it up.
He's amazing.
It's hard to do.
Very hard.
I mean, that's where your quarterback has to be aware of who's going to be free.
Yes.
Yeah, and then another concept that every offensive lineman has always been taught is find work. And that's what you do. If you see 3 people in front of you drop outs, you're not free for a play.
Right.
Like, your job, I did my job. No,
You're not working on your golf shot.
Yeah,
Right.
Find work, right? So things dropped out in front of you, pressure's coming from somewhere else.
Right.
So find work.
And, what you hear a lot of coaches talk about, and this is true, let's say, with stunts and games as well, is if somebody disappears from you, you got to go find someone else.
Right.
Because
You gotta look
someone's
for work.
disappearing because someone else is coming from somewhere else.
Yeah.
Sure.
The funniest thing is this, is usually where the guys that are disappearing to is where the guys are coming from.
Right.
Right? So if they're disappearing to the right, there's guys coming from the right.
Right.
Because they're trying to cover up where they just left.
Right.
But it's hard, Jeff. I mean, you can't change the protection call in the middle of the play.
Exactly.
So ultimately, you count on awareness of players. Yes, you coach it in the sense that you say, hey, they're going to give us a lot of overload looks, but you have to be aware that may not. We have to account for that with the protection, no question. But just be aware it may not come from there.
Right.
So you just have to keep drilling it, but you can't change the protection call in the middle of the play.
But that's why it's important when you look at the Eagles' offensive line. Okay, this group's now together for 2nd season. And Dickerson's now the young guy of the group, but it's hard when you don't have an experienced line. Like if you look at the Giants line, right, and doing what the Eagles did to them in the Week 14 game. Well, they've had so many changes in the interior.
Right.
And the one thing that I've heard about the Giants' offensive line is they've not been good against stunts. And I'm interested because the Eagles, they don't do it a lot, but when they do it, they're pretty good.
They've done it. They've been successful,
Yeah.
but they're among the lowest percentage stunt team in the league.
But they win a lot. The win rate is very good on stunts.
Yep.
So we'll see what they do. We'll talk more about that other side of the football.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
Wink is all coordinators say they break down protection, but nobody does it like this.
Yeah.
There you go. All right, we are going to take a quick break to hear from our friends at Sky Motor Cars.
Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people all over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schulter, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
All right, big thanks to our friends at Sky Motor Cars. If you go see them out there in Westchester, PA, make sure you tell them Adam and Jeff sent you. You will get a great deal. So we talked about this Giants defense, right? They've got guys back. Leonard Williams, Xavier McKinney, Adoree Jackson. So clearly they're not the same defense the Eagles put 48 points on in Week 14. But I do wonder today if, with everything Jalen Hurts is going through, if the Eagles start to get back to more of the first half of the season offense than they were in the second. Do they come out throwing, or do they try to come out a little bit more quick game, balanced, giving the ball to Miles Sanders? In that game, in Week 14, we joke because the Eagles ran for over 250 yards.
Yeah, but they
only had 60
Yeah, 60
at halftime.
yeah.
Right, it was like a Jekyll and
They
Hyde
threw the ball
type game.
24 attempts in the first half.
Right.
They hit some shot plays.
Right.
That's what they do. I mean, I don't see much changing.
Well, let me ask you, if they want to try to run the ball today, with Leonard Williams back and Dexter Lawrence, Greg, being one of the most improved players in the league, really came into his own this year, are they a tougher defense up front than Week 14 showed?
Well, Leonard Williams didn't play Week 14.
There you go.
He's a good player. You want my opinion on what I think the Eagles are going to do?
I want your opinion on this Giants front four and how different they are from maybe earlier in the year.
Well, I mean, obviously Williams is a big factor. He's a good player. No one knew exactly what Dexter Lawrence would be. They knew he was a good player, but he's been a special player this year. The most amazing thing to me about Dexter Lawrence, you're dealing with a 345-pound man. He played 77% of their defensive snaps.
That's amazing.
Think about that for a second. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't look at me. I mean, think about Jordan Davis right now.
Which is what I think the Eagles hope Jordan Davis becomes. But for a man that size to play 77% of the defensive snaps, and then you see what he did in the fourth quarter of the playoff game this past week when he was still playing like it was the first play of the game, is truly remarkable to me.
Right.
But I think that the Giants defense, look, they're searching at a linebacker, okay? No question. They signed Jared Davis. He automatically jumped in as a starter. They'd been starting Micah McFadden, a rookie from Indiana, who was a healthy scratch. Yeah. Okay, so clearly they were not happy with him, and because Jared Davis, who to me is one of the most frustratingly intriguing players I've ever done, because he came out of the University of Florida looking like Tarzan, fast, active, he looked the part.
Scouting term, folks.
Right,
yeah,
no question. This guy looked like he was going to be an all-pro from day one, and he's never...
Don't say he looked like Jane, though.
Don't say he played like
Jane. That's the scouting, just for people to know.
No, I know, but I mean, and he's been with 2 or 3 teams, never really has made it, but it shows you where the Giants felt they were at linebacker, that they signed him 2-3 weeks ago, and all of a sudden he's playing 80% of the snaps.
Yeah, it reminds me of when the Eagles signed Donnell Ellerby off the street to play for them a couple of years.
By the way, talking to Lions about Jared Davis, because he could not be a base down linebacker. They made him a blitzer.
And they made him a pass rusher.
Yeah.
See, and by the way, just as an aside,
hey, you got to
see that a lot in college with guys who are unbelievable athletes at linebacker, because the college game is different, because the game is more spread out because of the hash marks. You see so many of these linebackers who are fat, they look the part, but they don't really know how to play linebacker.
Right.
They're athletes.
Right.
They don't know how to read keys. They don't know how to key and diagnose, to use the overused term, instincts. And I'm sure Davis ended up being that guy.
Yeah. What's funny is that another indictment on their linebackers is that when you get into 7 DBs and you got Landon Collins.
I know.
All right, that's a defense that shouldn't be in the NFL.
And by the way,
in general,
even Collins last week, when they got to the fourth quarter, they took him out and put in Dane Belton.
Right.
So they didn't even love Landon Collins.
So from that standpoint, doesn't that sort of beg the Eagles schematically to try to come out in 12 and pass use Dallas Goedert? Right, you try to keep those run personnel on the field, or those linebackers or safeties that don't cover well.
If it's 1st and 10 and they're in 12, they won't be in dollar personnel. They'll play nickel.
So who's their linebackers though in those?
They'll play nickel with McLeod in the slot. That's what they do when they're in versus 12. Nate McLeod's in the slot.
I'll take that with Dallas Goedert.
McLeod's not in the slot when they're in their conventional nickel, meaning their pass nickel. Then it's Darnay Holmes.
Okay.
So this is my thought. I agree with your point. The Eagles should go back to the beginning of the year, the first 7 games, and play football that way. That football equates to winning in the playoffs. It's colder. The ball doesn't travel as far. It's harder to get a grip to be more accurate, right? There are so many different factors in cold weather and things like that this time of the year. So running the football and cutting possessions, you gaining time of possession and giving your defense a rest, those things helped our team out. I don't think that throwing the ball 1,000,000 times in the playoffs is something that you need to do to win. Am I saying that you have to throw it 50 times? No. 40 times? No. Why can't we get Jalen Hurts around that 30-31 range, and the rest of it is
run?
Here's
the way I would see it.
Yeah.
And we don't know until they do it, so there's no right or wrong here, by the way.
Yeah.
I personally think they're going to come out throwing for this reason. I think they're going to believe they can throw it however they choose to. It might be at a 12 personnel. You could be right, Jeff. But I think they're going to feel that if they get up 17-6, 21-6, the Giants' offense is not equipped to play that way. Okay, they're not a drop-back pass. Now, Daniel Jones has played really well over the last month or so, and Dable has given him, particularly against a bad pass defense like the Vikings, they've made him the focal point of the offense as opposed to Barkley. We don't know what they'll do today. We just don't know the answer to that.
Correct.
But they're still not equipped, as well as Jones has played, they're not really equipped to be a drop-back passing team.
Right.
So I think my sense is you could see them come out throwing, try to get ahead, and get the Giants totally out of their comfort zone.
Similar as the Week 14 game. Got a big lead, took the air out of the football. Hurts only threw it 7 times in the second half. Ultimately, that's what you'd like. Score early. You're going against a secondary that does not have a lot of good talent. We point out McKinney, he's really good. We know that Joey Jackson's back. He looks healthy. He's good. they know what they're going against. And the Eagles, like, they couldn't do this last year because they didn't have the personnel. Goddard doesn't have to deal with Ertz anymore. He's healthy. He needs to get the ball more. Devontae Smith's on an unbelievable roll right now. He's on fire, and
He's
A.J.
really a
Brown
good player.
is unstoppable.
Yeah. My feeling is that it's a little bit of a blend, that I do believe they come out throwing, but quick game throwing, trying to get Dallas Goedert. We saw what T.J. Hockenson did last week. Dallas Goedert is a way better athlete. I think you'll have a chance to hit Goddard and Devontae Smith, as you guys mentioned.
Way
Your
better?
Intermediary game.
I don't think he's way better,
You don't
but
think Goddard's a way better athlete than T.J. Hockenson?
way better.
As far as run after catch? Ability to
T.J.
make...
Hackins, that's his
Hackins
thing,
is
is
good. I
that
think
he
Hackins
runs.
is really
That he
good.
runs.
Good, but he's,
I remember looking at the
top 10 pick in the draft.
I was
now.
probably doing a little bit too much, as we say,
I think
box
straight
score
line
scouting on
speed, though.
yards after the
I
catch.
think
T.J. Hackins is a really good
he's
player.
good, but I think
player.
Goddard.
I mean,
straight line
we
speed
could
wise,
say
I'll
Goddard's
take that.
better if we want to, and maybe he is, but it's not way better.
He's
Okay.
a better overall player.
Yeah.
But Dallas Goedert's a better overall.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right, we're going to take a short break to hear from our friends at Rivers Casino and Sportsbook.
Game night for me is every night. At the place where I meet up with the guys, grab a cold one, and watch the big game on the big screen. So whether it's the money line, the pass line, or a parlay, I'm in it to win. This is my city, and this is my place.
All right, big thanks to Rivers Casino and Sportsbook, the host of Inside the Birds pregame live here all year long. For the second straight year, they do an unbelievable job. We thank them for this great set and the ability to have the show here. And of course, if you're going to put a bet down on this game, do it right here at Rivers Casino and Sportsbook or on the Bet Rivers app. The Eagles are, and this changed a little bit from overnight, they're now 8-point favorites. It was 7 earlier in the week. It was 7.5 last time we did a pod. Yesterday, and then 8 right now, but the over-under has remained about the same. It's at 48. Of course, Rivers, all year long, people have come to enjoy all the specials, like the $15 bottomless chips and salsa, $12 pretzel bites, $16 easy peel shrimp. They had the spin and win contest. We would watch people win all the money, and if the Eagles won, that they would give 2 extra spins to find extra winners. They had the Choose the Champs weekly pick'em challenge. They've got a whole new overhauled video game area, betting area, sportsbook, huge TVs, got games on.
You can't miss it. It's right in the middle. You
Cannot
can't
miss it. It is
awesome.
a fantastic place to come and enjoy your sports viewing. So we always thank our friends at Rivers. Just real quick, curious to hear your guys' thoughts on that 49ers Cowboys game tomorrow. Who do you think might come out of that, Jay?
49ers is a better team,
49ers is the better team?
and I want to play the better team.
You want to play the better team?
Yeah.
So you want Eagles 49ers?
Yes.
All right, Greg?
I think the Cowboys defense is not geared to play an offense like the Niners really well because they're a base personnel offense.
Yeah.
And I think the Cowboys defense is built on their sub defenses and being really aggressive with their multiple fronts, which I think is hard to do when you're playing against a lot of 21 personnel. And the Niners with their 21 personnel are the most diverse formationally in the league. They literally have 5 eligible receivers who can line up anywhere in the formation. And I think what happens a lot is you put the defense in default coverage situations because they can't start communicating on every single snap like that.
Yeah.
So, I think that they're not, I don't think, if the game were to turn out that the 49ers were in a lot of 3rd and longs, then I think the Cowboy defense could be a factor.
Yeah.
But if it's not, and the 49ers can kind of stay ahead of the sticks, I think the Cowboy defense, the aggressiveness that they show when they're at their best will be mitigated to some degree.
Yeah, it's so funny.
agree with that?
No, I agree because it's this play. Oh, Juszczyk is in the backfield. Next play, Kittle's in the backfield. Next
Right.
play, Christian McCaffrey. Oh,
Samuel's
Brandon.
in the backfield,
It's that's a lot of information for you to have, like, to be aggressive and blitz off of. It's just too much.
And it's funny, you know this, that Rod Rush used to come sit with me.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, defensive coordinator for years in the NFL. He started his career coaching Joe Green at North Texas State in the late 60s.
Did he? Wow.
He's considered sort of the pioneer of quarters
Rod
coverage
Rush.
in the NFL. And he would come sit with me. He did this for 5 years on Mondays during the season. I learned so much defense from him. And he said when he started out as a young coach, because he really was so into it and he wanted to kind of show how much he knew, he'd tell his defense, well, when they line up in this formation, we do this. When they line up in this formation, we do this. When they line up in this formation, we do this. When they line up in this formation. And then he said he realized after a year or two, you can't play like that. That it's too much information for the defense. That you just so in other words, you basically say, hey, there's 2 formations we're going to be specific to, and then the rest we're going to play our rules and our techniques.
Right.
Yeah. And that's what happens. You can't have your defensive players responding to 6, 7, 8 different formations.
Sure.
It's too much mental work.
Somebody's going to blow it.
Somebody's going to blow it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
Adam, I'm just going to tell you, if the 49ers lose, if the Cowboys win, all right, and we're doing Eagles Cowboys
it'll be lit.
next week here. I'm going to be here the night before the show. I'm gonna fall asleep like this, wake up, you're ready to go.
It'll be lit.
They'll start tailgating on Wednesday.
I know. Yeah. Oh my.
Before it ends.
That would be amazing. But I'll tell you what, the Niners. We all know this. The Niners have a great roster. What Brock Purdy's done has been just simply remarkable. And they got the Trey Lance issue. I know they're not thinking about that now. I actually talked to someone with the Niners this week. We actually brought it up.
Trey who?
Dude. Exactly. He's like, dude, we're a long ways away from that.
Dude, by the way, do you know Rand Carthon?
I met him.
Yeah.
I know. He's actually in the press box one time.
Yeah.
Scouting for the Rams when he was with the Rams.
Yeah.
Yeah, Maurice's son. It's a pretty cool story.
Yeah.
The new GM of the Titans. But no, look, the Niners have a great roster. It would be a great championship game if the Eagles would host either one of those teams. But the Niners are the better football team. And the quarterback, what I love is when scouts are wrong. Everyone I've talked to about him goes, I can't believe this. They're just waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Also, the Cowboys have a little weakness now in their O-line because Jason Peters, believe it or not, he's out.
They have 2 more changes this week.
He's out, so they have 2 more changes this week.
Boy.
And, we'll see. I mean, look, there's going to be an upset this weekend. There's always one, and there could be more, but there's almost always one. And who knows what it is.
The other problem the Cowboys have is opposite Trayvon Diggs. They continue to roll these guys out there. Bland and Joseph, whoever it is.
Xavier Rhodes comes.
Well, here's what they did
Right.
last week for the first time this year, and you make a great point. They kept Bland outside all game, and they played Mukuamu at slot corner, who was actually the outside corner opposite J.C. Horn at South Carolina. He's 6'4", but they made him a slot corner because they really don't have anybody else.
Right.
And also, I don't know, we'll find out tomorrow, but I think Jaron Kearse
He's going to play.
Is he going to play?
Yeah, they think he'll be able to play.
But if he doesn't, that's a problem.
He's the tight end matchup, right?
Oh, yeah, and he's a good point because they're a big nickel defense. They play 3 safeties.
They love tall corners, tall safeties.
Yeah. Well, most teams do if they're good enough.
6'3", though, 6'4".
He's 6'4".
Yeah, and Kearse is 6'4", and the kid who played slot corner is 6'4", right?
Nahshon.
Is he a rookie?
Isn't Nahshon Wright also a big guy?
how do you say his
Nahshon
name?
Wright's also big.
Who's inactive? Ikuamu? How do you say his name?
Mukuamu.
Right, and he's a rookie, isn't he?
Maybe second year, but he's 6'4".
They have 4 players at corner or safety.
So they're making a lot of changes late in the season.
Which is not good.
Yeah,
You don't want to be in that situation.
They got away with it against Tampa Bay, but against the Niners they won't. And we all agree the Niners will win.
Well, Tampa had one of the worst offenses in the league.
True.
Tough to watch.
Yeah.
True. All right, you guys do remember the conversation we had 2 weeks ago on the show about Andy Reid, his legacy, where he belongs on Mount Rushmore.
Sure.
Interesting note about how many Reid and Reid disciples will be coaching in the playoffs this weekend. Of course, Andy Reid still coaching the Kansas City Chiefs, but Buffalo, coached by Sean McDermott, defensive coordinator Leslie Frazier. The Giants today, their offensive coordinator Mike Kafka. Jacksonville, of course, with Doug Peterson and Mike Caldwell. So you have a significant number of coaches and coordinators.
I find it very interesting, and you could speak to this, Adam, because, this is a media thing, I guess, but you don't hear much about Sean McDermott. Now, I don't know if that's because of their quarterback, but no one really sits around saying, boy, Sean McDermott's a really good coach.
They win.
And yet,
how many coaches they had before Sean McDermott?
and yet their record over the last 30 games is remarkable.
It's been great.
Remarkable. Yeah. And the last time they actually lost a game where they truly didn't play, where they lost by a meaningful score was week 5 of last year.
Right.
They've only had 3 or 4 losses since then, and every one has been super close.
Sure. Yeah. And you look at his background. He is a defensive backs guy. He does some linebackers too, and certainly their defensive backs. He's had guys like Jordan Poyer, who have not, who is
Micah Hyde,
pick, Hyde. A linebacker, Matt Milano, not a first-round pick. He's had guys.
Really good player.
I got another one. I got another Andy Reid guy who's maybe the best receivers coach in football. Chad Hall.
Chad Hall, that's right. Or he's the
Phenomenal.
wide receivers coach for
his
the Bills.
players bought him for his birthday. Remember the truck? I mean, he's done a great job. So
Doing a really good job.
Developed there.
You play with Chad?
Play with Chad. Chad is hilarious.
He is funny.
Chad is funny. But me and Chad still have conversations today. So, yeah,
Who was
he's
coached
good.
by Jamal Singleton at Air Force.
Yeah.
Yeah. How about
Chad, who was?
Chad Hall.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he was a running back at Air Force.
Correct.
And
Yeah,
Jamal
I-
Singleton
I
was the
love
running
those.
back.
I love those connections with coaches. I love when I
Amazing,
read
right?
books and I see the connections between coaches. That to me is great.
Great stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we gave you some interesting stats earlier about how lopsided the rivalry has been between the Eagles and the Giants, with the Eagles
late, yeah.
dominating that team. But I found this stat to be amazing, right? Since 1990, the Giants have played the number 1 seed in the playoffs 6 times. They are 6-0 in that span. This goes back to 1990, right, when they defeated the top-seeded San Francisco 49ers, the Bill Walsh 49ers, and then went to the Super Bowl and then upset the top-seeded Bills when Scott Norwood missed the kick. And then both of those Super Bowls under Eli Manning, they beat the number 1 seed in the NFC. It was the Packers at 15-1 one year, the 49ers the second time, and then they went on into the Super Bowl and beat the New England Patriots, who were the number 1 seed
Wow.
in the AFC.
Twice.
So,
Great-
yeah, twice.
great-
So
great
6
stat.
consecutive games against number 1 seeds the Giants have played in the playoffs and won them all. So one law of averages streak is coming to an end today. Whether it's them never winning here in 10 years or their great streak against number 1 seeds, it's going down some way, somehow.
It could
today.
get ugly if the team from the Jersey Turnpike, they're not from New York, they need to change that name. If they win, oh boy. Talk radio. Oh, by the way, we're back in the Fanatic Monday night.
We are back on
That
the
could be
Monday
ugly.
night, 6-8. All right, let's talk a little bit about this Giants offense. Daniel Jones saved his best game for his playoff debut, 301 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, 114.1 passer rating. He also ran, this one was almost unbelievable. We know Daniel Jones can run. We've seen that here, but 17 times for 78 yards.
Some
he
of
ran
them were a couple of them, I guess, late were
some kneel downs.
Yeah, I was
Still,
shocked at
78
how much he
yards
ran.
is the big number.
Yeah. He ran great.
Yeah, I mean, Saquon Barkley ran the ball 9 times. So very interesting. What did you observe about Daniel Jones against the Vikings? Was it more like taking what the defense gives when they're playing that zone, or?
No, they came out throwing. I mean, they've been more like this over the last month. You know, everybody just automatically says, oh, it's Saquon Barkley. It's got to be Saquon Barkley or else. They've really not played that way over the last month.
I have some great stats on that. Go ahead.
And I'm sure the stats bear that out.
They do.
Right, because the tape tells you that. So again, they're a very good play-action pass team. Jones has the 4th most play-action dropbacks from under center, what I call conventional play-action, because we see so much shotgun play-action. So conventional play, and the 4th most play-action dropbacks of any quarterback in the league. That's the way they want to play, because say what you want about Barkley, their run game is already established. You know, I love when people say, well, they got to establish the run. No, their run game's established as we're sitting here right now. They don't have to establish the run in the game.
Yeah.
You know, because the Eagles are going to prepare for that.
Right.
Every team does when you have a pretty good running game.
Don't tell Mike
Right.
Zimmer that, okay?
Right. Yeah. So Jones, they've been a little more aggressive throwing the football, and when you throw on first down, which they're doing more of, you tend to get more predictable fronts, more predictable coverages, and not that it's easy, but look, last week they came out on the first series and conventional play action, they hit Slayton on the crosser, part of a post-cross combination, which everybody runs against cover 3, and then they did it again later, I think on the second possession for 40-plus yards. So they want to be able to play like that.
Right.
And then Barkley gets mixed in.
Right.
And then Jones is a threat as a runner now. He's not this, he's actually a pretty good runner.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
they want to be proactive with how they use the pass game. That's why I suggested the Eagles could come out and throw and try to get ahead.
Right.
Jones was not really like, everyone said, oh, he's got this great straight line speed, but doesn't have any moves. Last week, you saw him make a move right, cut up, like he had some moves.
Yeah.
Last week, and I know that they design a lot for him, and I think some of he actually took off when he didn't like what he saw.
To Greg's point, Jones in the first 9 weeks of the season was averaging 26 passes per game. Since then, it's up to 34, which is a 30% increase, which shows you they've gotten away from being run heavy to incorporating the pass. Jay, how much do you attribute to your former teammate Mike Kafka and the game plan that he's been drawing up for the Giants? And what do you remember about Mike just when you were his teammate? Did you see kind of a really strong offensive mind there?
Yeah, he worked. Mike Gaff is definitely a guy that works extremely hard, loves this game. I remember seeing him in, I want to say Miami, and he told me that he was going into coaching. And he's like, oh, I'm done with it, I'm gonna go into coaching, and he did it and is doing great. I always say this about what the Giants have been able to accomplish over these last, few weeks, and against the Vikings in general. I think it's more geared upon who they're playing against. I think Ed Donatell should have been fired.
He was.
I know. I'm just saying before then.
Right.
Because if you look back over the year and look at what the Eagles did to them and how vanilla of a defense it was, and you allow Daniel Jones, a team that's going over 30 points, only a few times this entire year and twice has been on you, right? That's not a good sign for him. So I don't think that the Giants are just this newfound offense. I just think that was a very bad defensive game plan.
And that's the caveat.
Sure.
It could be just,
right?
Yeah.
But at the same time,
but I will say that they were more aggressive. Like Greg said, on first and second down in clear running situations, they chose to throw the ball, which is uncharacteristic of them most of the year.
Right.
So that's good, but I don't think that they're going to have as easy. Now the Eagles, no, let me stop. The thing that kind of scares you is because Ed Donatell's defense and the Eagles' structure are the same.
I think the personnel is a lot different,
yeah.
but yeah,
Structurally,
yeah.
personnel makes the difference.
Right. Absolutely.
But if we don't bring our guys up and we play soft zone, similar things can happen.
Would you play cloud coverage?
Huh?
If you're Gannon, how would you play your coverage? Would you move your corners up?
Yeah, what I'm saying is that you have to be able to get in front of guys and encroach them. Just don't let them run free down the field like the Vikings did.
Yeah, we've been talking
right? And you can do that in zone, but you're trying to throw off time. So if you teach your underneath defenders to touch people before they get to the second level, you're in a good situation most of the time, even if it's zone.
Let me ask you both before we move on here. Knowing that you're playing with, the Giants have three receivers who quite frankly wouldn't be playing if their other guys were healthy. Wouldn't you go with more man coverage? Why play zone? Why play so much zone? Or are you just afraid of Daniel Jones?
Repeat that question.
When you look at the Giants have at wide receiver, and you have the Eagles secondary, which is really good. They're all healthy now, other than Maddox. Why wouldn't you play more man? Why do you have to play so much zone?
Well,
I know the scheme is.
Well,
I get that,
Daniel Jones has rushed for 708 yards this season and 7 touchdowns, rushing touchdowns.
So you're worried about running.
So what that means is that he's definitely a threat with running the football. So that's one thing, right? I'm not saying that he's Jalen Hurts or he's Lamar Jackson or anything like that, but he is a formidable runner. That's one thing. Another thing, you just don't change your defensive structure. We talked about this earlier in the show, is that guys kind of stick to what they know, right? And do I believe that we should play more man in situations? I think man is something. First of all, your corners
were earlier this season, brother.
Your corners will hate you in your entire existence if you play man-to-man the entire play. It's the entire game.
But
it's
up your
tough.
percentage, right? But up
yes, but you can up your percentage, and in critical moments, you should be playing man. You should be playing man in critical moments.
The Giants had some really good man beaters last week. I mean, I remember third down play. It was and I saw this. I remember the Rams used to do this with Todd Gurley, but they lined up trips to one side and they had Barkley offset in the backfield to the other side, and he worked through the line of scrimmage. They did this 3 or 4 times in the game. Remember the play I'm talking about? Yeah, he actually caught a 26-yarder. Barkley on third down.
The crossing route that he had.
He worked through the line of scrimmage.
Yeah.
I mean, they had some really
play,
they had some really good man beater concepts. You know, I mean, the past game is about concepts. I mean, you can play man. I'm not saying they shouldn't, Adam, but I mean, then you start getting into how you attack man.
It's really not what they do a lot of.
Right. Yeah.
The thing that kind of changed the game plan for them was how much misdirection they did early to start the game.
Yes.
And I think that's important for every offense, right? Because you kind of keep those linebackers and those safeties from flowing freely when you add the element of misdirection, right? They had a trap in the game plan. They had a sweep. They had a toss left when all the motion was going right for the touchdown. They had multiple plays like that earlier in the game that kind of keeps your defense at bay, and I think that's critical like going forward for the Eagles to see, but also for the Eagles to do some of those things.
I'll just be fascinated to see if they keep throwing, if the Giants come out throwing, because I think against Donatel, because they knew what they were going to get, very soft coverage, backed off, they had a lot of room. But this team, the Eagles secondary is way more talented than Vikings secondary.
Yeah.
And you're playing 3 receivers who, they've been a great story. Richie James, it's the most receiver he's played in the NFL. Remember, he's mostly a special teams player. In that one monster game on Thursday night, filling in for Ayuk 2 years ago. But these are guys they should be able to shut down.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the Giants' best playmakers, and not one of them would start for the Philadelphia Eagles, other than maybe if you count Saquon.
Yeah, but
Barkley.
I understand that. And again, I'm not sitting here saying, wow, the Giants are going to win the game. That's not my point. But that's ultimately not relevant, not to knock you, Jeff.
No, that's why I brought up the coaching element of it.
Because these are the Giants guys. They're important to the Giants. It's like this week people ask me all about Dalton Schultz because he caught 2 touchdowns last week. Dalton Schultz is not a top 5 tight end in the league, but he's their tight end.
Right.
And they throw to the tight end. So you know what? He gets targets and he gets catches.
Right.
But he's not a top 5 tight end in the league.
Right.
So we know Isaiah Hodgins isn't A.J. Brown or Devonta Smith, but you know what? He's their guy. And when they throw the ball, he's you know what I'm saying?
He has really good hands.
Yeah.
Listen, for the purpose of this conversation, what we're really talking about, though, is 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7. What is Jonathan Gann doing? Because Isaiah Hodgins is not better than your corner. Darius Slayton isn't better than your slot guy if your slot guy is C.J. Gardner. From a paper standpoint, you have the personnel that should be better than when you face the 49ers. That's a different discussion,
right?
Because they got guys who are skill position players better that are as good as your secondary players.
I agree with you. The Eagles do play man on those positions.
Right.
They just don't always bring them toward the line of scrimmage.
Right.
That's what we're talking about. And guess what? You guys listen. Most of the time, the guys that want to press will press. There's no coach in the NFL, unless it's zero blitz, that's saying, hey, in man-to-man, you can play off if you want.
Right.
If that guy said, hey, coach, I want to press, go ahead. That has to do with the mentality of the player sometimes, too.
Sure.
But yeah, in fact, Gannon go on the record. I don't know what one of the coaches talked to, maybe one of the DB's coaches said last year, that they would leave it up to the players whether they wanted to press or not.
Yeah.
What they were comfortable with, and a lot of the time they're not.
Right.
So.
Right. So who's the guy? If there's going to be a guy today that Jonathan Gannon says, I can't let this guy on the Giants beat me. Who is that guy?
Slayton's a guy that early in his career would beat the Eagles.
Yes.
He still could run.
Well, Slayton can run. He's the only receiver they have that can run by.
He's a vertical guy, yeah. Now Richie James is interesting. That game that I talked about 2 years ago when Ayuk was on the COVID list late, he had a false positive.
Yeah.
Richie James had 180 yards. It was bombs away. It was crazy.
Well, he can run.
He could run.
He can.
Rich James can run.
In fact, the Eagles were going to sign him here, but he had the same offer from the Giants to the Eagles.
Somehow, Richie James had the foresight to see
that everybody would get hurt for the Giants.
Everybody was going to get hurt.
Right.
Was going to get traded. Like, I don't know how.
Right.
Jeff brought that up. We both laughed our asses off. We're like, how the heck did he? And it's just so funny that they're playing him, and he's their 3rd receiver. But the thing that I don't understand is, Greg, or Jay, maybe you've seen this, his yards per catch number is very low.
James?
I get but can he be a vertical slot? Well, I don't know why he's not running deeper routes.
Well, I just think that's the way that the offense is designed. It has not. Remember, you're at the mercy of who's calling your plays. If he's calling your plays and you're catching a slant or a stop route, you can't do much with that.
You don't see them take many vertical shots.
Right.
They're not built that way.
Right. Right.
Don't forget, the O-line's an issue. I mean, we haven't even mentioned something that I'm going to mention now. I don't know if it's in your format.
It might be.
It might be. Is the right tackle position. Neal was a high pick. Neal was a high pick, and he struggled at right tackle. And people may remember that Week 14 game. He really had a hard time with Hassan Reddick.
He did.
And the reason I'm mentioning that is because that does impact your play calling. It impacts your use of personnel. Sure. It impacts your formations.
Right.
So there's a lot that it impacts beyond the fact that Reddick can beat Neal. That's the obvious thing. Right. But there's many variables that go beyond that. And Neal has struggled. It was an issue he had in college, which I thought would be corrected in the league, and maybe it will be as he keeps playing. But when he gets to the top of his pass set, particularly on 45-degree and vertical sets, he has major balance and body control.
I was just going to say, I said this on our Friday show. from someone we spoke to in scouting said, it's never good when you're on your butt a lot.
He's on the ground a lot.
Yes, that's the scout.
Because he loses balance and body control.
Are his struggles similar to the way Andrew Thomas struggled as a rookie, or is this a little bit different? Because Andrew Thomas had his issues too.
Yeah,
and he's an All-Pro now.
Yeah. Probably similar, but I'd say Neal is probably a little worse right now than Thomas was.
All right.
And Thomas is a good player
now. He has
now.
equal upside because they were both very high picks.
Yeah, I mean, I liked him coming out.
Neal?
I did, but I knew this was an issue.
Gotcha.
I thought by now it would probably not be as much of an issue.
Right.
But it still is.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
Have as many issues as you want, Evan.
Right.
The Giants kind of knew this.
Yeah.
Coming in, what the team
I think
looked
everybody
like.
knew.
Yeah, it wasn't a secret.
No.
They just he needs a full off season of working on this. No, and then also the interior. They got 3 veterans who are just good enough.
They're guys you can play with, but they're not what you want.
It's not ultimately not with. And they're not playing Bredesen. They were earlier in the season. He got
No, he's playing.
Oh, is he starting now? Because he wasn't.
No, they rotate Gates and Bredesen.
Which is not
Within the game.
Oh yeah.
Which is not what you want. And Tyree Phillips is starting earlier this season.
Yeah.
Who they also acquired from Baltimore off waivers.
Right.
This is, again, if you set it up, the Eagles' D-line, their front against this offensive line, the Eagles should win.
Which is another reason the Giants want to be in a game where they can stay ahead of the sticks and be proactive throwing the ball. Because they're not a drop-back passing team. And when you say that, people probably think, oh, Daniel Jones. Well, there's many factors that go into why they don't want to play like that.
Sure.
Because then if you have to have 7-step drops because you have to throw the ball, their O-line can't hold up, and it certainly can't hold up against the Eagles.
Exactly, and they haven't in 2 times.
Right.
Because Evan Neal did play in that season finale.
Right.
While all the
And he didn't look real good in that game either.
Yeah. No, he did not. I want to go back to defending them in the passing game. We know that, well, listen, if we can use the season finale as a tell, what we expect today is that C.J. Gardner-Johnson will play safety only in base downs, but then he will move to the nickelback spot to replace Avonte Maddox in the passing downs, and those are the downs that really count. For the
especially since the Giants have really played a ton of 11 personnel in recent weeks.
Right.
It's not their MO.
No.
They were heavy 12.
But they've changed. That's another change they made.
And they're showing trust in Jones. Also,
well, they also want to get their best players on the field, and their second tight end is not as good as when they have 3 wide receivers on the field.
And you'll see Lawrence Cager today. He's a former receiver.
Yeah, he's a former wideout from Florida State. He's a big dude. He can run a little bit for a tight end.
For a tight
I think he had about 65 targets against the Eagles in that season finale.
Oh, and also, Reed Blankenship is that safety who comes in.
Yes. So getting back to C.J. Gardner being in the slot on passing downs with Reed Blankenship coming in to play safety, I know you like that. I remember you saying on Q&A you felt if they weren't going to play Josiah Scott, which you felt they needed to not do, that's the position for C.J. Gardner-Johnson.
Yeah.
I slightly have skepticism about that. I'll explain why after you, but I want you to explain why you think that that's the best thing for the Eagles.
I think that Josiah Scott's the weakest link on our defense. And I'm not, coming at that young man. I'm just talking about just from what we've seen on film. I think that he's been picked on multiple times, and I don't think that he's held up besides a good play on the interception one game. When you consider what he's put on tape, I think that that's a weak point that people are attacking, and I think you have to shore that spot up. And I think that Reed Blankenship has played okay. It's not world-beating, but he's not at the brunt of a bunch of mistakes. So you got to take the people off the field that are making mistakes and that are liabilities and put your best foot forward. And I don't think that there's anybody else on this team that can place the nickel besides Gardner-Johnson.
How is nickel in this defense similar or not similar to what Gardner-Johnson did with the Saints, Greg?
Saints played a ton more man coverage.
Okay.
A ton more man coverage. They played cover 1, they played 2-man. They would lead the league almost every year in playing 2-man coverage. The Eagles don't do that very much. So he's coming from a system under Dennis Allen where they played a much higher percentage of man coverage than the Eagles play.
Okay. So hear me out on this.
Okay.
I agree that the idea of getting Josiah Scott, your weakest link, off the field helps the defense. I would say, though, I felt the Eagles' defense was at its best, and I don't even think this is arguable, was the first 9 or 10 weeks of the season when they were far and away the NFL's leader in turnover ratio and in takeaways. He had 6 interceptions. He had those from the safety spot where he was flourishing in. When you put him in nickelback in this style of defense, I believe now you're taking away that great turnover element you have. You might have him in man situations, back to the quarterback, running with the receiver, and not putting in a position to create takeaways, which I think in playoff games are as important as ever.
Yeah.
They only have had 2 interceptions since he got hurt. One was by Reed Blankenship when he filled in against Aaron Rodgers. The other was by Josiah Scott, who probably won't play very much today outside of special teams. So I would question, and maybe this is more about if they move past the Giants and they face tougher offenses, how they're going to produce takeaways, because I think this defense and the way they play it, it's important that they get takeaways. If you're taking your top takeaway guy and putting him in a spot where I don't know that it's going to be the same opportunities for those takeaways.
I hear your logic. How do you get a takeaway if the guy's getting the ball caught on the entire time because they're playing through him? Mm-hmm. Like if you have Josiah Scott on the field and you're playing against playoff teams that may have an advantage there at nickel, whether it be Deebo Samuel or Kittle or look what CeeDee Lamb did against us a couple weeks back. Right. So when you put that guy there, will you get a takeaway if the safety can't get there?
Fair point. I don't know. I would say that they won games even when Josiah Scott was giving up yards.
No,
but they did not.
They didn't.
Get
how many times they get takeaways?
They didn't. Because he was off the field.
So just I've asked this question. They think they'll get, because the pressure is so good. That I guess maybe it was the Saints game. They were close. How many drops did they have? The defense, the Saints or the Giants game?
I don't remember. I don't think the Saints, they had their hands on too many balls.
The Giants game, they must have had 4 drops.
It was the Giants.
So I ran this by someone who would know and said that you got to understand, you're trying to minimize your issues. Yes, sure, you'd love to get a ton of picks, but that's a bonus. You just don't want mistakes. And having Josiah Scott, this is what Jason's talking about. When you have Josiah Scott out there, he just is not good enough. You're trying to minimize the players who can't help you.
Sure.
And you and I sided on the same side because we were talking about this like weeks ago. And I ran it by someone again, and the guy goes, "Look, man, you got to just be able to get your best guys out there." And Josiah Scott's not one of them, unfortunately.
And here's the other issue, Jeff. We know that Gardner Johnson is good at safety. But you have to look at each one of those interceptions. And I can't remember every one.
I didn't think
that was my next point.
But I can remember
I thought most of them were good, not just right place for
No. I believe 3 of them were tip picks.
Right, and the other factor too is, did they occur because the quarterback made a bad throw?
Right.
I can't remember all of them.
Right.
So this is no knock on Gardner Johnson. I think he's a very good safety. Okay,
Right.
and he did. I remember plays when he was at Florida where he played safety and he made good plays. So he can do that. But just because that happened, I don't know if that's
right. I get that he would not have finished the season with 12 interceptions.
Yeah,
yes, I know that.
Yeah,
I get that.
But he
too.
plays a specific way, and he plays center field. He's just really good at that. And some of that you can't teach. He just has a knack for it.
Right.
But the thinking of the person I spoke with said, "Look, the best thing is to get Scott off the field on defense and get Blankenship
And in
on."
this game, because of the Giants' pass game, like if you're speaking in this matchup,
Yes.
you need your better players closer to the line of scrimmage because the Giants are not a downfield passing team. So you need a slot corner who's a good slot corner.
Right.
That's more important than a deep safety.
Yeah, I almost have a more long-term concern when, like I said, when you face, if it's the Dallas or 49ers or Kansas City or Buffalo.
I mean, there's no question having, and by the way, having a really good slot corner in this league matters.
it's important.
You can start talking about the teams, that are still playing.
CeeDee Lamb.
Okay.
Right.
I mean, slot corners matter in this league a lot.
Who you have in Cincinnati?
Mike Hill.
Hill's
One of the
really
best
good.
in the league.
One of the best in the league is Teron Johnson in Buffalo.
Yeah,
People probably don't even know about him.
Yeah.
He is terrific. They play nickel on every single snap, no matter who the opponent
Jimmy
is.
Ward's good.
Right.
Jimmy Ward's good.
Hey, the only reason we're
Yeah.
having this discussion is because Avonte Maddox is good and he's out.
Right.
And that's what they're doing.
So it's more important to me, based on seeing the entire league, particularly when you play so much out of a split safety structure, to have a better slot corner than it is to have a better deep safety.
Jay, who was the toughest slot corner you went up against, if you could recall? One of a couple guys you thought.
Darrell Revis when he was a rookie.
Oh, he played slot.
He played nickel.
Played nickel.
When he was outstanding.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And Chris Harris held you every play, and he would tell you that he was going to hold you.
And he's still playing.
Yeah, Chris Harris was really good at slot, and I was like, man, why do you keep holding me? Like, he was like, listen, the NFL wants the game. This is what he told me. The NFL wants the games over in 3 hours. The chance that they keep calling me for holding on each play.
Or slim.
Get out of here.
They might get it once, maybe twice,
Yes.
but they're not going to get me 10 times. Right?
Yes.
No, it's true.
Got to get that on Twitter.
I'm
That's
still
awesome.
flipping that when we
That
get
is a
home.
great story.
Oh, man. All right, check out our friends at PHLSportsNation.com. They're enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto, so make sure you check them out at PHLSportsNation.com, and on Twitter it's at PHLSportsNation. Just to go back through some of the points I was making just on takeaways, I'm not even discussing the movement here, but for the first 12 weeks of the season, the Eagles led the NFL in interceptions with 15, total takeaways with 23, and they were plus 13 in turnover ratio. I think the Ravens were the next closest team at like plus 8, so they were far and away the leaders. From week 13 to week 18, the Eagles are minus 5 with just 4 takeaways, 9 giveaways. That's pretty. It's almost like a tale of two teams in that regard. The best turnover ratio is weeks 1 to 12. Eagles were at plus 13, Ravens plus 8, Vikings plus 6, Cowboys plus 5, Seahawks plus 4. So the Eagles were they were on another level for the first 9 weeks, and then obviously it's been totally different. That minus 5 turnover ratio is tied with Arizona and the Commanders for the worst in the league since week 13.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, is also fueled by them giving up the ball. It's not just about takeaways, it's giveaways
Remember
too.
we were asked how sustainable this was? Mm-hmm. Well, Gardner Johnson out was a big part. In fact, that's the issue is the free access and some of the things that have happened when Gardner Johnson was out.
Right.
They just were having much better success. I know it's one player, but the numbers show it.
Right. Well, and it also coincides, Greg, we talked about this. For the first 9 weeks of the season, Jonathan Gannon wasn't blitzing a lot, but he was blitzing more than last year, and he was sort of middle of the pack.
They were
the NFL.
selective with their blitzes.
Yeah, and then he would throw some cover zeros. I mean, he did some different things.
Right.
Certainly since CJ went out, and then from 9 to 13 to 14 and week 18, we started to see less of that. Do you think
Well, I don't think at his core he's a high percentage blitz guy.
Correct.
I mean, I don't think that's the way.
Fangio style doesn't.
Right. I don't think that.
Why do you think he changed, though, from the first half of the season? Do you think it's CJ went out?
It could be. I mean, those are hard questions to answer. Because those are philosophy questions based probably on a number of factors that, I don't. Maybe Jay has a reason for that.
That's CJ being out, and
It
then
could be
a young guy. It's not just any replacement. You were playing a rookie free agent at safety,
right?
And Josiah Scott at corner.
So now you have 2 guys in your secondary that you might be concerned about their understanding of exactly where to be when you blitz. Because don't forget, if a mistake occurs on the back end, it could be a touchdown.
Sure.
And and we know Gannon's not the only one, but we know Gannon does not want to give up big plays.
He also coaches to his personnel.
Yeah.
Right.
We saw this last year with Steve Nelson. He was not going to give up big plays. They're the defense. We're not giving up big plays.
And keep in mind also, they've been able to get pressure with their D linemen.
Yes.
So it's not as if they have not been able to get pressure on the quarterback.
Right. And it is, I would say, Jay, a big stamp of approval for how they feel Reed Blankenship has played, that they are putting him in this spot.
Definitely.
And moving CJ to nickelback.
Yeah, he's definitely been a great addition, especially with a guy in this situation that maybe had an opportunity that most people didn't get. He took full advantage of it when he had a few bad plays in the beginning in that first game that he had. What was the second game maybe against the Packers?
Well, he did. Yeah, right. He had the interception.
But he gave up some. Right. But after that, you haven't heard anything from him, and he's aggressive toward the line of scrimmage when he has to be. So, and even some of the plays that are caught in front of him, they were blown coverages from guys that are out that are in a different spot. So I believe that he's done a great job. And Kayvon Wallace, guys that have been drafted ahead of him, different guys, he's playing over them. Yeah. So yes, he's made well of his opportunity.
Don't forget about the one, he did get trucked at the goal line by Davis Webb on that touchdown. That's not his best play of the year, but I'm kidding around. I'm kidding.
It's probably a trust factor.
It happens.
I mean, Blankenship is obviously not a high-level athlete relative to the NFL.
Correct.
But, one of the things, and you can speak to this, with defensive coaches, it's trust. They know he will not make mistakes.
Yep.
Like I said, he may not make the special play that a better athlete would make, but he's going to be in the right spot. He's going to play the coverage correctly.
Right.
And therefore, he's not going to give up the big play. He just won't make the special play, but it's trust.
Sure.
I remember having those conversations with coaches about linebackers years ago. I remember having a great conversation with Dave McGinnis about a player, and I forget who the linebacker was, but, he said to me, oh, well, he's our starter because he does everything right.
Right.
That matters a lot to defensive coaches.
Because as I was saying earlier, they'll give up the splash play with Gardner Johnson as a safety. They just don't want problems in slot because it's an important position.
Yeah. And it certainly was an area that teams were attacking them while he was out. No doubt about it. All right. Our teams, Public Square and Rebel Hill, they are back. They've been with us all year long, bringing Inside the Birds pregame to life with all these great graphics, this great camera, the lighting, and even making Jason Avant look good. If you want a show like this in high definition, with great graphics, with great videos and more, you got to contact Public Square Media and Rebel Hill Productions to produce your podcast, your webcast, your live show, anything that you can dream of. You want to bring it to life, you get this team because they can do it. That's Zach, that's Jim, that's Public Square and Rebel Hill. Please reach out to them. Please, 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 if you want to take your great content and amplify it the way our team does. We are eternally grateful to them. All right, let's move on. We were mentioning Saquon Barkley, and I really just wanted to put stats to the context that you gave about how they're morphing from a run-first team to a pass-heavier team. In the first 10 weeks of the season, the Giants were 7-2. So you would think, hey, this is great. They got a formula to winning. Saquon Barkley was averaging 24.6 rushing attempts, and 103.4 yards per game.
Through 9 games?
Through first 9 games,
carries,
which was 10 weeks with the bye. That's a lot of carries, it's a lot of yards.
It's a lot of carries.
And you would think, man, that's so good, we got to keep doing it. But from weeks 11 to week 18, it's not just a little drop. 11 to 18, 13.9 carries, 54 yards, 3.9 per carry. They literally halved his total of attempts and carries. In fact, he was up there. He was number 1 in the league in carries through the first 9 weeks. No, number 2 to Derrick Henry, and number 1 in yards. And since then, he's so middle of the pack that he's, guys like Tyson Algier had more rushing yards than him. Algier over the last 8 or 9 weeks of the season. So that's really fascinating that they had a formula that made them 7-2 that way, but they also had the foresight to know that they're trying to develop a passing game, and you got to win.
One could argue, and Dable's a pretty smart guy who's coached in this league for quite a while, in addition to coaching in Alabama with Nick Saban, that he knows that formula is not a Super Bowl formula.
Correct.
That he needed to develop some continuity and stability with his team as a first-year coach, and that he needed to develop Jones in his system, and that it wasn't going to happen overnight because it never does.
Right.
And then he realized, and he probably knew this all along, by the way, that at some point he was going to need to morph and transition into the quarterback being much more of a driving force and the pass game being much more of a driving force.
Right.
Because you can't win championships in the NFL without your quarterback and your pass game being a driving force. Now, this is not to suggest we're going to discuss Daniel Jones in the Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow category. That's not the point. But Daniel Jones has clearly played better football over the last 3, 4, 5 weeks.
Oh yeah, no doubt about it.
It shows the higher trust that they have on
Correct.
Right.
And that's right.
Right. We're also learning, by the way, the Kansas City-Buffalo game last year is illustrative of it, that the adage that the running game and defense travel really well in the playoffs is sort of an old hat way of thinking.
Or you
would
need
like to have it,
run the ball and stop the run in the playoffs.
in the playoff. Yeah. That's Kansas City.
And by the way, you can run the ball. The Niners run the ball, but you have to have the pass game that goes with it.
Right.
It can't be. It's like Tennessee. That's the problem they face. They don't have a pass game that goes with a run game.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
No, I still think that stopping the run is a prerequisite in order to win. Now, when it comes to, because one-dimensional offenses do not win. If you can't run the ball at all,
I would agree with that.
You're not winning.
There's a balance there, but
Yeah,
I
so it's
agree
the
with that.
balance. Yeah,
Fair. What did you think of Barkley's? He only had 9 carries for 58 yards.
he ran hard.
But I was going to bring this up because we have talked about him this year and Craig, you had a great note on sort of a feast or famine type of running back who does not run with great contact balance and vision all the time. But I was watching that game, I thought, man, maybe for one game, I mean, he broke some tackles, he spun away from one.
By the way,
a different guy.
He can, on any given play, break it. I mean, he could have a 7-yard
explosion,
touchdown today.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the kind of back he is.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and obviously you have a long run, you get a lot of yards. You know, there's no question. But I don't know if he is a true sustainer in a strict sense.
Right.
You know, and they probably know that too. I mean, that's why this has happened. That's another reason why this has happened.
I think that's the element of the playoffs too. The element of the playoffs when there's no tomorrow, I think guys play hungrier. And I thought that he played as hungry as I've ever seen him play. Especially the one on the goal line where he took the defensive tackle into the end zone with him.
Yeah.
Like that was a hungry, aggressive play, and he played like that the entire
That's
game.
what I thought. I thought
so I
this
think
was
that's a
difference between
playoff
Barkley.
situation.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, Mojo, let's talk about Mojo. They're building a sports stock market where you invest in your favorite players, you invest in what you know, turn your sports knowledge into real money with Mojo. The sports stock market, real stats, real value. The shares that you buy entitle you to a guaranteed payout based on career-ending stats. That means there's no off days, no off season. The share prices, they're rising, they're falling. It doesn't matter what month it is. Anything can happen to change someone's career-long projections. So you can cash out anytime. You can build a portfolio and buy and sell on your terms every game, every play, every season. And the app currently offers NFL players over 300 skill position players across quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends. Mojo is available in New Jersey on iOS, and by downloading the app, you'll have a chance to win up to $10,000 in free shares of player stock. Now remember, if you don't live in New Jersey, Mojo will be coming to you sometime down the road, so you want to get started, you can still download the app and watch how the share prices rise and fall week after week. All right, so again, click the link in the description box of this video if you want a chance to win that $10,000 in free shares of player stock. Got to be 21 or older, physically located in New Jersey to trade on Mojo. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. I don't know if there's someone who improved their stock more from the beginning to the end of the season than Jalen Hurts. All right, you're talking about a guy whose stock increased on Mojo 72%.
Wow.
As he led an MVP.
I guess they had no expectations when the season started.
Oh, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And we all didn't know what to expect. Certainly, no one would have said, I think he's going to be MVP candidate.
That I get, but when we were training camp, we'd have to say we were surprised. We're not surprised, we were impressed. He looked good.
Definitely. I still wasn't ready to say he was going to be an MVP
I said
candidate.
didn't know how good
50%,
he
yeah.
Right, there's no way to know.
Who's the quarterback
Freaking
potentially next year that could be the guy who's
Breakout guy?
Yeah, is it Daniel Jones? I mean, you got to think the Giants are going to get some
after what
linemen,
he's
some
done.
weapons.
Well, he's going to be re-signed.
Yeah.
Right now, but who's the kind of guy who could take the step where they're right now?
Invest in low and see it pay. You got to think the Giants are going to get some playmakers and some linemen.
will.
You know my
Draft
philosophy with Mojo is always pick the backup quarterback.
Brock Purdy.
Man, look,
searching
what
for
if
the
you
next
had Brock Purdy? What if you had Brock Purdy? You win a lot of money like that. Yeah. Yeah.
I'll tell you who I would put in that category.
Uh-huh.
Deshaun Watson.
Oh, that's a
So
really,
you think he'll be better
really
next year?
fast.
Well, he's very talented.
Yeah, and he got there late.
This year was a waste because the guy hadn't played football in 2 years.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if anybody really expected him to play well. I mean, I certainly didn't.
No.
But the guy's really talented.
Yeah, he is.
So, I mean, I would imagine with a regular off season and, you know, the same coaching staff offensively,
Yep.
right?
He's
They
back.
didn't make any changes
No,
up,
no
right?
offense, no.
Maybe.
So,
Yeah.
I would expect him to.
Maybe
I got
Sam
it.
Howell.
That's pretty
that's
interesting.
They want to hide the quarterback there. They literally want to run the ball
Oh, my
5
God.
times.
They really-
They want to run it 50 times and throw it once.
They're not even secretive about it.
Yeah, still, you got to throw it.
I got one for you. Sean Payton becomes the Broncos head coach. I think Russell Wilson could be saved. He was so bad this season. I just don't know what to think.
It's a great question. I'm going to have to leave that one alone because I know too much.
All right.
That must mean he can't be saved.
Do tell.
I'll give you another one. Bill, okay,
I know
one
too
more.
much I can't say.
Okay, one more. If Bill O'Brien becomes the OC of the Patriots,
Mac Jones will be a much better player.
Very good.
That's a good one.
That's a really good
Yeah.
buy
one.
Mac Jones.
Because Mac Jones, Mac Jones is truly considered by many to be, a good
What were
player.
they thinking with the
Bill Minnick,
Listen, we could do a whole other show on
I
that.
can't speak
folks,
to that.
when the Patriots Twitter account,
That was Juan.
they actually
coordinator.
announced that they're hiring an offense coordinator. They announced it. They never do stuff like that.
Yeah.
It tells you they know that Bill made a mistake.
By the way, if that does happen with Bill O'Brien, not only Mac Jones, but invest in Ramondre Stevenson because he will continue to become a beast in that offense.
Yeah.
He's going to catch a
By the way, Bill
shitload of
O'Brien
passes.
should have been the Eagles head coach at 13, just so you know.
They did like him.
He
They did.
was his decision not to take
That's
the job.
correct. That's correct.
That's when he was with our friend, right?
Yeah, it was very close. But Bill couldn't make a decision. The Eagles moved on. Got chipped.
All right, let's get into our player to watch segment that is always presented by Game Time Watches, the leader in licensed sports watches. Get your favorite NFL, NHL, or MLB team logo watch now at GameTimeWatch.com. Hey, Eagles fans, Game Time Watches is partners with us at Inside the Birds to offer a special promo code for 20% off. Use the code ITB20. That's ITB20 for 20% off on GameTimeWatch.com. That code applies not just for watches,
All sports.
not just for Eagles watches or NFL watches. That's right. Anything not already discounted. And they got a lot of styles to choose from for men, women, and kids. We've told you about the men's varsity style watch with the shiny face, the big team color logo, metallic accent, metal case, thick black silicone strap. It makes it the everyday style of watch. They also have the varsity drip art edition too, all at GameTimeWatch.com. Now this is my fun part for me, just seeing if these guys remember who they picked as their player to watch and their score. Jason Avant, who's the player to watch today?
I think I would have Devontae Smith.
You had Devontae Smith.
Devontae Smith, and the reason why he's been on fire, but if Wink Martindale comes out and says, I'm not going to let A.J. Brown beat me like he did with Justin Jefferson, you may have an opportunity for Devontae Smith to have a lot of yards.
Fabian Moreau,
So,
maybe
yeah.
on him. Yeah, no doubt about it. Greg, I dare you to disagree with Jason.
No, I had Devontae Smith, and this may or may not happen, but here's a thought that I had.
Thank you.
We saw last week that they lined up, they didn't play a ton of man, but they did line up Adoree Jackson over Jefferson. And they bracketed Jefferson a number of times.
Sure.
Part of me thinks they could do something similar, but in reverse. Put Jackson, who would be their best corner, on Devonta Smith, and use Moreau, who's not as good as Jackson,
With the safety help.
with the bracket on Brown.
Right. That makes sense.
I'm not saying they will do. Just a thought that I had.
Sure.
But I think Devonta Smith, to me, has played exceptionally well recently. I think he's such a good route runner. I love watching him. I love the way he uses his vertical stem to get corners to turn their bodies.
Yeah.
I just really like the way he's played. And because that ties into my belief that the Eagles will come out throwing more than running, he was my guy.
Sure. Now, I will agree with you. There is a 50% chance that may happen and a 50% chance that it may not. You like those?
You're
You like
pretty
that?
good, Jeff. I knew there's a reason you're doing
Why
it.
I'm in this
yeah,
seat.
yeah.
All right. Adam, who's your player of the game? You cop out freaking picker. Who's the player
Okay,
of the
all right,
game?
tough guy. Let me explain this. All right. I'm picking Jalen Hurts.
Oh, whoa, what a shock.
No, well, wait a minute. He has a bad shoulder. Because I'm choosing to believe they're going to run him this game. They're going to get back. The only way they're going to advance, be a Super Bowl team, is they've got to play their usual style. Everything works off of Jalen Hurts in the run game and RPO. And watch the defense react when they don't know where he's going. That's how Miles Sanders has been so good.
Fair enough.
So I expect Hurts to be a big part of this. If he's not, they got problems.
Do you think Patrick Mahomes will be the player of the game for the Chiefs this week, too?
But yeah, but what?
I know. I'm
but
just
again, he's
messing
not
with you.
hurt.
I know. It's okay. I just don't like when people pick quarterbacks. It's just the thing. I've got Hassan Reddick as the game time
against
watch
Evan
player of
Neal.
the
Which,
game.
By the way, it's not a bad
Based on
pick at all.
everything we talked about with Evan Neal
incredible.
and one-on-one matchup, that does not favor Evan Neal. It favors whether Reddick or whether it's Sweat. I just think you're going to see a big game.
How long was Reddick's deal?
3 years.
3 years. All fully
And it's
guaranteed.
looking like a bargain now.
It's a great deal.
Yeah.
Oh, is he a little bit better than you thought he'd be, guys? Do you think he's been?
Reddick?
Yeah.
I mean, again, the numbers are great, but I always thought he was a good pass rusher. But
Looks like he's elite this year.
Yeah.
The speed, the power.
well, the thing is, too, I think he's in a situation, and I'd have to go really study this. I'd be curious as to how many of his sacks or how he gets his sacks. Are they a lot of one-on-ones? I know he's had some sacks with stunts, but
He's really good at stunts.
but I'm
lateral
curious
movement
as to
really
how
good, yeah.
many were one-on-ones based on the Eagles' front.
Right.
Because he's also playing in a lot of five-man fronts, but I like I said, I don't know for sure how many came from that, but you love to get your really good pass rushers one-on-one.
Sure.
He's significant with beating guys one on one.
Yeah. I still think, if you had to, Josh Sweat does more than the sack numbers.
I would agree with that 100%.
As
He's
complete
so
as they
good.
get on
He's
on the defensive
He
line.
might be the best defensive player. Josh Sweat.
I think Josh Sweat.
He's really good.
On the Eagles.
You know how I feel about him. I said that.
He's a stud.
I think he's a big-time stud.
Thank goodness he's fine physically.
All right, let's pick this game. The Eagles are now 8-point favorites with an over-under of 48. Jason, I start with you. I like your score. Your score is interesting. Who do you think wins this game?
I have the Birds winning 33-27.
You do. So you've got
Wow.
no cover, but definitely the over.
I definitely think that the way that the Giants are playing offense kind of leads to them scoring more points based on what we have shown if Jonathan Gannon doesn't deviate from what he's done in the past.
Right. Now, do I have to remind you?
You
Greg,
do.
Of your pick? Okay. Yeah,
I know, and I just did it yesterday, but I was home and my grandson was over, so I can't remember.
Okay. You have the Eagles. You have the Giants winning 55-3.
There you go.
I think it's really a bold pick.
Right.
That is a true senior moment.
Right.
No, Greg has the Eagles winning 30-20. So interestingly, you think also a little bit of a higher scoring game, but the Eagles double digits.
I mean, I think the Giants are going to score some points. I really do. I mean, I think they're playing well, and I think they will score.
Okay, 30-20. Adam, what score do you have?
I have it a little lower than when we did our show Friday. I've got it 27-17 Eagles.
Oh,
it's just the
okay.
Lane Johnson factor and Hurts. There's got to be some percentage that they're not going to be quite what they usually are. But Eagles will win. They just have the better roster. And another thing is, don't underestimate the bye. Because they had some things they definitely had to clean up.
Yeah.
And I believe in the staff that they'll get this stuff cleaned up.
Well, I'm happy to say that I was on the exact same wavelength as Greg Cosell. I also had the Eagles winning.
Wait, you have to have an odd score. Go ahead.
20. No, not an odd score. 30-20.
Score?
Not
55-3?
No, not 55-3.
I have it 26
to like 16.
9. Didn't the Eagles have that against the Seahawks 26-9 twice?
17-11.
17-11.
Twice in the same year.
How's that happen? Same team.
All right, remember you can bet that game right here at Rivers Casino and Sportsbook in Philly or on the Bet Rivers app. Big thanks to Rivers, Mojo, Game Time Watches, Sky Motor Cars, the teams at Rebel Hill and Public Square. Thank you all for joining us. Next week, if the Eagles are in the NFC Championship game, it's a 3 o'clock start. We will be here at our normal day game time, which is 10 a.m. till noon. Make sure you're checking out all the coverage of today's game on InsideTheBirds.com. And of course, Inside the Birds post-game live, myself, Adam Caplan, and former Eagles offensive tackle Trey Thomas. For Jason Avant and Greg Cosell, Adam Caplan, I'm Geoff Mosher. Thanks for watching Inside the Birds pregame live. Enjoy the game!
Yeah.
The Birds!
Yeah.